What's up, ladies and gents? This is Basement Side. I'm Deeg. I'm here with Wrel, the lead game designer of Planetside 2. How's it going, Wrel?
Not too bad. How you doing?
Doing fine. Uh, so, the lead game designer role on Planetside 2, how long have you been in that spot?
You just jumping right in it, huh?
Oh, that's how I do.
Let's see. How long has it been? More than a year, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, probably
And tell
year
us
and
a
a
little
half,
bit
maybe two.
about what that means. What does the lead game designer do?
So I guess it probably depends team to team, but what I do, as lead game designer, it's holding the vision of the game. It is actually doing the work and like creating the goals and objectives that we're trying to hit with certain updates and that sort of thing. And then, like any designer on the team, all of us, we're creating the actual designs to implement whatever change and features and that sort of thing we want to see in the game. I do also like help with. I guess it's not art direction per se, but because Alan Lapidus is the lead artist. Um, but just it's kind of like giving my 2 cents on how like what my vision looks like, and then the artist can take and say like, okay, just like this, and we just work closely together, and kind of do that with all the departments, or at least all the heads of the departments. So
Gotcha. Shout out to Alan. He's been sharing a lot of great stuff on Twitter recently about some upcoming content for Planetside.
yeah, Alan, he gets excited about stuff, and it's really cool to see him excited about the stuff that he's working on. I think that's, I don't want to say like a rare thing in the games industry, but sometimes you don't necessarily get to work on the stuff that you want to work on.
Oh yeah,
But for him, like yeah, like he gets super excited, and I like to see it.
that's
And he's
cool.
got a bunch of stuff that you're going to see at some point.
That's exciting. We'll just have to wait and see what's coming up.
Yeah.
Um, so how important is that excitement? Because when I see Alan get excited, I think it kind of gives the community permission to get excited too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Like that's so when we can be happy with something, to the point where we can share it. Like we've done a lot of stuff that we don't want to share, and we've kind of been doing these teasers over time. Uh, we kind of feed off of the hype of the community too. Um, and a lot of times, I think my biggest fear, I guess, is just letting the community down. It's like trying to, I gotta try to keep the hype in check sometimes, because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of good ideas out there. And it's like it's not necessarily for this update. So yeah,
Right.
no, but we really enjoy it.
Do you ever have to like stop yourself like in the middle of the night from being like, I just finished this great design document. I know it's gonna go through. I really want to just hop on Reddit and just drop a teaser on an alt account. Do you ever have that kind of moment?
I Yes, yeah,
Uh,
and actually not even just like the like it's going to go through thing. I think it's more about like, I like this idea, but do other people like this idea?
I
And then
see.
there's something different about it coming from me opposed to coming from a community member,
Hmm.
because I've seen like a lot of stuff rehashed over the years, and depending on whose mouth it comes out of, and just like what kick the community's on at the time, is kind of they go through cycles. It like that'll change how it's received. So
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes I think about doing that just for fun, but in general, I think it'd be super fun to design stuff like on stream. But then there's always the chance that you don't like, if we're just like doing a design document or something like that, it could be really interesting and engaging for people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to go anywhere.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then it can become kind of ammunition down the road
right.
if there are other disappointments. Right.
Yeah. No, and that's, yeah, the internet never forgets.
Yeah. And I think if anyone out there knows about that, it's you. Raul, one of the main reasons I really wanted to talk to you is because, as you know, being a lead game designer by itself, I think is insanely interesting, just all by itself. But what a lot of people who are newer to PlanetSide, which is, by the way, we haven't mentioned, PlanetSide is an MMO FPS. If you haven't heard of it, it's free on Steam and PS4. Go check it out. Um, but you are not just a lead game designer, you're a lead game designer who started your PlanetSide career as a YouTube video creator who then got
Right.
brought on by the company developing the game and worked your way into this role, which I think is I'm not being, hope I'm not being hyperbolic when I say it, an insanely interesting story.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree from that. I mean, from the from player to developer is kind of like the dream, that a lot of us have. My dream in particular has been to make a game, just like something that I can call my own, and something that's like genre defining and just ambitious and really grand. And even on Planetside too, I've had a lot of agency, but I don't think that's we're not at that point. But maybe if there's future projects, I'll be able uh, to accomplish my goal, and then go into the spiraling decline that gold medal Olympiasts do. After they've reached the peak of their career. Yeah, but no, the story is it is pretty good. Like every step that I've kind of taken is been toward this goal in some way or another.
Well, why don't you take us through it? I know that you started making Planetside YouTube videos as far back as 2012. Is that where the story starts for you? What's a logical starting point to your mind?
Yeah, yeah. So that is probably a good starting point. I think I was in the Navy at the time,
Hmm.
um, and was working on this side, the YouTube stuff. I've done videos in the past, like Warcraft or World of Warcraft, and then Warcraft 3 videos and that sort of thing. Just video creation in general is something that I've kind of enjoyed doing, and game design like as well. Just like the little, I have journals and journals and journals and journals of just like ideas for games or just like classes inside of games and all that sort of fun stuff. And I think that most people probably have like most people who aspire to being in game design probably have do something similar. But yeah, with my channel, it was really more of a, like, I didn't go into it saying like, hey, I want to do YouTube for a living. Yeah, totally defeats the point. It's more like, I really like making videos, and what can I do that's like helpful? And actually, my kick was interesting, helpful, and entertaining. Those are kind of the three pillars that I
Hmm.
was trying to achieve with my channel. And yeah, it just kind of went up from there. I mean, there was a lot of people when the game launched. I was doing Mass Effect 3 multiplayer content, I think,
Hmm.
at the time, and there wasn't really like a niche for that. It doesn't seem like I was able to do anything that other people weren't already doing.
Hmm.
But Planetside 2 had launched, and I was really interested in the game, and it was just a lot of fun. And there were a lot of content creators who were like, yeah, you had Total Biscuit, you had Level Cap, you had Sergeant Merrill
A lot of
doing
big
stuff.
names who were
Oh,
big
yeah,
before Planetside.
yeah, yeah. And then a lot of like mid-tier channels who are kind of doing like Kool-Aid line I used to watch all the time. STL Youngblood, he does Star Citizen stuff now. um I was following them, and like I just kept going in my little niche, and doing my videos, and eventually a lot of them fell off or moved to something else. And I think that kind of helped solidify what I was doing, or like my place as a content creator.
Okay.
Just the consistency, creating the stuff. Like obviously there was a need for it.
Hmm.
When it comes to uh, Planetside 2 in general, like new player experience is really awful.
Yes.
Continues to be awful. So making videos that was like an angle for me. It was just I tried to help new players at like every turn. So that was something that they were able to kind of latch onto. And let's see, that's
So
that's
yeah, you
yeah.
were at this point you had a, we're talking like maybe 2013, 2014. You become established as a Planetside YouTuber. You're the guy people go to for weapon reviews. You're the guy people go to
Mhm.
for how do I play heavy assault? How do I play infiltrator? You're doing a lot of these how-to videos, and also some news updates as well, some overviews of systems when they come in the game.
Mhm.
All great content. You're so now take me back to 2015. This is the
I
timeline
can't
as I
even remember
understand
back
it,
that far.
and I might. Well, I hope you remember. But But late 2015, you're still making YouTube videos for Planetside. And then in January 2016, you upload a video saying, hey, I'm working with Daybreak Games, the then studio for Planetside.
Mhm.
What happened between making videos on YouTube in 2015 and that video? How did that relationship kind of get started?
Was it in 2015?
I think
I
so. It was
Okay.
your
Yeah,
life, so you should correct me if I'm
well,
wrong.
see, the thing is that, like, it's all a blur
Fair
to
enough.
me, but, yeah, no, I was originally doing contract work for them pretty early on,
How did that get
so,
started though? Did they just like email you? Did you email them? Like, what was it like? Do you remember?
uh, let's see, so, David Carey was the producer of the game, I guess, 5 years ago now,
Uh huh. Uh huh.
maybe, and, I was at SOE Live, um, pr during a year at some point. And I had talked to him, and he mentioned to me that there's not just one way to get into the games industry.
Hmm.
Like, a lot of people go through QA and they kind of work their way, into those roles.
Right.
Uh, but really what it comes down to, and this is totally not verbatim, and a lot of it is just like the message that I was getting from him, is just like the passion and the interest and the willingness to like do the work. And that was kind of where I was at with just the channel. And anybody who has run a YouTube channel, which is probably not many people in the audience, or uh, just in general, I guess, it's actual work. Believe it or not, it is. There's definitely some clickbaity stuff that you can do, to up views and that sort of thing, and that's totally not my kick. But it's like making one video is at least uh 8 to 24 hours, depending on the length of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know make at least 4 week, more preferably. And if they have, like, if you're doing substantial content within them too, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard work. um yeah, and then you don't get paid for it, not really.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the money that I was making from YouTube was not worth mentioning. um I had
What
a
was your peak
Patreon.
subscriber count? I think you had like that's like 76.
85,000.
So
It's
85K,
around.
not
Yeah.
making dough.
Oh, no, no, no. Well, yeah, even then, like, it's less than you can live off of.
Mm-hmm.
I think the majority of my income was actually coming from Patreon. So that's people who like they thought that what I was doing was important in some way or another,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted to contribute to do that. Um, the like, outside of just the weapon reviews and the new player stuff and and whatever else, I really like to do this series called Thoughts on Better Gaming,
Yeah.
which is more it's more like philosophical or like sociological, depending on
Tell
the
me about
video.
that. What inspired those videos?
That's a good question. I don't know. Please do not go sub to my Patreon. I don't know if it's still up. It might still be up. Uh, Hopefully most people have fallen off. I think I have a disclaimer on it.
Well, you clearly this was a work of passion for you.
Mhm.
I don't get the sense that you were working on YouTube videos with the hope that someone would notice you and ask you to join the team. It was kind of one thing
Right.
going to the other, right? But
Yeah.
the idea
So.
that passion reads, I think, is evergreen. You can't. It's something you
Mhm.
can't fake, and people recognize. I think most people recognize the amount of effort that it takes to make a YouTube video of a really complicated game system, to get footage, to make it look nice, presentable, and more importantly, to be consistent with those things. Something that I've struggled with is, I mean, my content is just sitting down and talking to someone and then putting it on YouTube, and I find it hard to be regular with that. What you were doing was a lot more involved. So,
You're doing a great job, by the way.
well,
Uh,
thank you.
yeah.
I'm trying to parlay my experience running corporate conference calls into talking about video games. You all can let me know how it's going.
Yeah.
um,
It's good.
but yeah, so talking about getting started with then Daybreak Gaming. David Carey, you said there's more
Mhm.
than one way in, not just the traditional QA route. So then, what door did that open for you?
Let's see. So the details are all kind of fuzzy. I'd have to go back through emails from years and years and years ago. But at one point I was asked to interview, like, fly down to California, and which I did, and I met everybody there. And let's see, I can't remember if this was before the contract work or I think it was no, it was before the contract work. So I went down there, did an interview, and this was after getting a message from Andy Seitz.
Mm.
I think David Carey had split from the company at the time. They'd gone through whatever number of layoff it was
Yeah,
on at the
that was a
time.
big year for the team. 2015 is when it went being SOE to Daybreak, right?
Yeah, is that when PS4 released as well? I think so.
Someone in the chat can correct us.
Yeah. But that was kind of a part of the process too. So I went down and I interviewed and got to talk to each individual on the team. And I was kind of like fanboying because as a gamer,
Yeah.
I'd seen these people. It's so funny. I had seen these people that comment on like Reddit threads and stuff, and they'd share this or they talk about that, or you'd see them in there was like videos that SOE did way back, just like doing like little cheesy interview videos, and there's like the work in progress streams and everything else, that kind of came along with it, and like I got to meet them right on the game that I love and doing things on, and that
What
I
was that like?
forget how exciting that was. Yeah, it's when you don't think about it now, right? And I kind of yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about in general, I think.
The you that you are now would be over it because you've been in those shoes now. But looking back,
Yeah, I don't necessarily know. I mean, over it's probably not like the
okay,
right
okay.
word. Like I still am like really excited to meet people who work on other projects. Not that I've met many, um, but yeah. So maybe that's just like an inherent uh, gamer thing, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's weird.
Yeah, designer being excited about meeting other designers, people who work on games. It's totally natural. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you flew down, you interviewed,
Mhm.
then what happened?
I tried to convince Andy Seitz not to hire me. Uh,
Why would you do that?
so basically, uh, what I told him was that okay, so here's the candid stuff. So we
Oh,
go sit down and I meet with everybody, and got some questions from Luke Sigmund, and I got some questions from Kriegshauser and Bishop and that sort of thing, and talk to everybody who was around, and then I sit in with Andy Seitz and I'm talking to him and I'm saying that I like I don't have any experience in the games industry. Like what you guys need right now is probably a coder so you can make the game better. And like that was my concern. Because I really really like this game. uh,
oh,
but he said that like spots for designers are opening up like when we because we're about to ship PS4 and whatever else or something along those lines. But I was like uh I told him basically that I absolutely had to work from Connecticut, because I have a family and everything else. And he said like, we'll see what we can do, set you up and that sort of thing. And we did, uh, but not right away. I think that there was like a long period during the PS4 launch. I don't know what was going on there at the time, but I got like ghosted for a few months or a couple months at the very least. And then I get an email later. My recollection could be faulty. There could be some missing steps or some misinformation here, some fake news, but this is how I remember it.
okay.
And so I get the email, and then I can't remember. I I want to say that I went down there again. I could be wrong about that, but either way,
Man,
I
Rel.
started doing contract work for them out in
Okay.
Connecticut,
Uh-huh.
and this was a very it was a very interesting experience because basically, like they sent me a computer that it was just like a work computer and it has like I can connect to all our tool sets and that sort of thing. And I was since I was just there on my own. Nobody's like sitting there saying like, ah, this is how you do this and this is how you do this. I was just going into design tool and like ripping things apart and like reverse engineering everything that I
Mhm.
possibly could.
Mhm.
It was at one point actually I created a bunch of new vehicle stuff that they got in trouble for. So I had to delete it all. It was like new abilities for the Vanguard, the Prowler, and
Like
the
what?
Lightning, and then the Mag Rider. Let's see. All right. Well, people are gonna hate on me for this. Remember, I was younger. Let's see. I did Empire specific abilities for the Lightning. So
Oh.
like one was like a lockdown for the Lightning.
Mhm.
One was for the Terran, obviously. One was a mag burner for the Lightning, which just went forward, but it was like amazing.
Is
Um,
yeah.
and then one was a shield, just to mirror all the faction traits, but
Right.
on the smaller platform. Um, Realistically, I don't know if the Lightning would actually, you know what? I think all those abilities probably could work.
Yeah.
But and then for the Prowler, I did it was something like akin to doing like hitting an e-brake, like it'd make you go into this stealth mode, like it basically give you stealth, and then it'd make your treads slip, but intentionally, so you can kind of like sneak in on people. And it was just like it's more like an interesting idea than anything else.
Sneaky
It changed
prowler.
the handling characteristics. Yeah, yeah. So imagine sledding, right? Or just like
Yeah.
whatever. Oh, and it killed all of your engine audio, and it killed all of your particles and everything else. So just like you just like would
Is it like
slide into
drifting?
yeah, yeah. So you can go at an angle, and, like slide in, and then like fire at people or whatever, and then you let off the space bar or whatever it was, and then you could start going again. And actually, you can move faster uh, than you could normally, just like by using the terrain.
Uh-huh.
So it was fun. Uh, Probably doesn't make sense for that to be in the game, but
Oh, it
super
sounds
fun.
so fun though.
Super fun.
Also, the idea of a
Uh,
mag burning lightning is going to be burned into my head now. I have to think about that one.
yeah, yeah. No, and it had like super harsh thrust, so just like you'd ramp off of things. Um, and then let's see, the Mag Rider one was what was it? Yeah, I can't remember. Can't remember what the Mag Rider one was. But the Vanguard was like a low scale turbo. So basically, the thought was like, what would NC do if they wanted the Mag or their Vanguard to go faster? Oh, they'd probably just strap a big rocket on the back, like a rocket
Mhm.
engine.
Mhm.
But it was like that. It would just like it'd help you get up hills, basically.
Mm.
So it wasn't like a thrust like the Mag
Like a
Rider.
torque boost kind of
It was
idea.
yeah, yeah. It was like a consistent, sort of thing, and I thought that was really cool too. Um, Actually, you know what? And then I did a second one that was
It's all coming
different,
back
very
now.
very different. Yeah, yeah. But this was for the Vanguard as well. And what it did is it turned you invisible. Now, turned you invisible, right? But like it did it in a way that didn't cloak you. It actually like disintegrated your chassis. So all you would see was like the particle trails of the Vanguard like at a distance, and then it'd rematerialize. You couldn't turn it on, you couldn't toggle it, but it was on, and then you go and you sneak into position, and then you like rematerialize. Kind of like the cordium veins, like when you deplete them, like they
Yeah,
kind of dissolve.
I
Yeah,
can
it's the same
imagine.
thing, but in reverse. Um,
So you got in
but yeah,
trouble for all
anyway,
that.
so yeah, I got in trouble for that, uh, and yeah, it was more like hey, don't do this, like unless we have something specific that we want to do. But for me, it was more about making things. Like I love to create. The act of creation is something that I'm really passionate about, and that's kind of helped propel me
Mhm.
through the years, of especially of having smaller team and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I
Um,
was watching your interview with Mukas you did a couple months ago,
mhm.
and one of the things that you said, Yoshi described this time, and you said how important it was to be. You were described it as being a self-motivated time, and what you just described sounds like it matches up with that 100%.
Mm.
You didn't make the vehicle changes because anyone told you to. You wanted to make something, and I'm sure it helped you learn the tools in a way that you wouldn't have learned it if you had just been following someone else's,
Oh
task
yeah,
list, right?
yeah.
Self-directed is um, usually a better way to learn things. I've found.
Mhm.
So, this sounds to me like kind of like a designer instinct. Do you think that's accurate? Like, is this the inner designer coming out?
Um, yeah, but but there's kind of a difference. And some
Okay.
designers just want to they want a checklist, and then they like do the tasks that are asked of them. And then some people, will do like be able to take on systems and call it their own. And that's kind of the that's what you want. You want people who are willing to take some sort of agency over the systems, and also just like run with it. Like, if every little detail isn't thought out, they're like, yeah, I have an idea that can, they can fix
Right.
this gap. And it's about people like, going back in and like finding all the holes that they probably have, in their design stuff too. And then for me, it's more about like, well, I guess along the same lines, but I like to invent the stuff too. So it's like what can we do to make the game super cool, or like what weapon would we want to see in the game, uh, and like I do the task, and then I make the thing. I mean I I'm making it sound like I'm a rogue agent, which is a little bit
I know
true,
what you're talking
but
about. I
yeah.
actually, um, I have the pleasure of conducting a lot of interviews for my team at work. I work at a tech job. I'm about half split between doing actual work and talking to people.
Hmm.
And one of the qualities that I scan for when I'm talking to people is agency, the ability, the experience and the ability to actually take ownership of a task and not just do what you're asked, but to also bring something of yourself to the assignment and kind of propel it yourself. And that's an important quality, I think, to have. And I think it really distinguishes like a lot of people you see out there as creators on YouTube or on Twitch. Um, I think generally it's probably biased towards people who have that kind of attitude where they want to be once taking agency, they want to have ownership of the process. Um, versus like you say, people who just kind of want to work from a task list. Um,
Yeah, no, it's kind of it's almost like an entrepreneurial instinct. Just the like you're putting yourself into whatever
sure.
you want to do. Yeah, no,
How
it's
important is
super
that?
important.
How important is that quality to game design?
It's really important. I think on a bigger team you could probably get away with more people who are content to kind of like go down the checklist. But on a team that like we have, let's see, three. I want to say three and a half designers. One designer we just brought on, and he's actually from QA and he's doing a great job. Um, but even that's like it's not a lot of designers in the scheme of things, especially for a game of this scope and of this scale. So the more that I guess you're willing to come, like maybe even not come up with the specific idea, but like say like this is the idea. What can we do to make it amazing? Um, and just like have that person kind of invest themselves in it. That's extremely important. If it's somebody that we have to babysit, like show them how to do every little thing, and they're not like willing to explore, like the potential paths to
Mm-hmm.
get to the destination, then it's oftentimes like more trouble than it's worth.
Mm-hmm. Or
Yeah.
just do it yourself. That kind of
Right.
idea.
Oh yeah, no, and that's a really bad habit of mine.
Hmm.
Um, I really just want to do everything, and I really have a hard time sharing.
You told me yesterday when we met just to kind of go over what we were going to be doing, that
Mhm.
you had were tired because you worked all day Sunday.
Yeah,
That what was going on then?
part of it. We definitely have a deadline that we want to hit with
Hmm.
this coming update, and to be honest, we're behind. Uh, and that's actually honestly that's why the summer
Ooh,
event even
get
came
off
out
the
to begin
phone
with.
right now. Get back to work.
Right. Yeah. So I really just want to do more. Like it's a lot of times,
Hmm.
um, there's not enough, or it's not done quick enough, or we hit roadblocks. Like a lot of times, it's just unavoidable, where you think that your systems can do something, and then you'll hit the roadblock, and then you either need to find a way around it,
Hmm.
which we often do, but sometimes you settle for like a lesser product, or you have code or some other discipline take a look at the blocks and see if they can resolve them on their side, which then allows you to push through. But even the so the blockers themselves obviously slow you down, especially all the head banging that you're doing trying to figure out the problem before like realizing that it's something that you can't solve. And then there's things like just the context switch too. Like having to start something new when you've kind of been in the groove working on one thing is that can slow you down as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the more that we can try to avoid that, the better. Obviously, a lot of that comes from good planning, which we're still trying to figure out, especially in this kind of work from home situation. I think it's a lot easier to get everybody in the same room and then like talk to them with your hands at a whiteboard than it is to kind of do everything from work from home. And then
Sure.
there's just a general awareness, when you're constantly being able to keep people up to date in person. Way easier to walk over to somebody's desk and say like, hey, can you look at this thing with me or whatever, than it is to try to contact them online and then convey the same ideas. So it's definitely a learning process for us. I think Escalation was a really good update, and then every then basically our work from home stuff really kind of kicked off. So we're still in that adaptation process.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good topic to go over. I definitely want to come back to that. But before we really dig into the current state, I want to go back to the story of Wrel. Last we left off, we were talking about you just getting started as an independent contractor, right? That's your self motivation to learn these tools. And then, so as an outsider, I look back at your channel. I see a video in January that says, "Hey, I'm working with the company. Here's what this means for the channel." Was it hard to keep up YouTube while you were also doing this work on the game?
Not initially, and then it got really rough, like draining.
Mm-hmm.
Is what it comes down to. Like I would still like to make videos if I felt like I had the energy for it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's like you wake up and then you do all these, try to do amazing things every day, and then you go to sleep, and that's not super healthy. Like if I was burning the midnight oil to try to get these videos and stuff done, it would be very difficult and very taxing physically and kind of mentally as well. And then honestly, like I don't know that those videos would have like the same value either.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I started to realize too. Uh, I thought that it would be, conceptually, I think it's a fun idea for like somebody who's developing the game to kind of like give you all the rationale between like how these things came into being and kind of what the thought process was behind it. But in actuality, it's people don't take it the way they probably should take it.
Hmm.
I think when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the bit, and you alluded to something like this earlier about how what people know about you and your position, your status, is you can't pull it apart from the message. People always see things in the context of the person who's delivering it.
Mhm.
So that was I'm sure, a really big change for you. Was it like an all at once kind of thing, or did it like it was like over time, like you said about the videos?
Oh no, that's something I had to learn. Like, it's funny because I've had kind of, I guess I guess I would describe it as like a contentious relationship with the vocal community, like especially
Hmm.
in certain forums, Reddit being the primary one.
I love Reddit.
Where I don't like to like let people walk over me,
Hmm.
but I found like giving those rebuttals and especially in usually like a kind of a sassy way or like a condescending or demeaning way in some cases, uh, like that sort of stuff would go to haunt you for a long period of time. And also as somebody in a position of authority, like that is something that I had to figure out, like, yeah, maybe that's not the best thing for me to be doing.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like I was trying to mesh these two worlds of people being like being the player, right? Who I still believe that I'm like the game's harshest critic to this day.
Mm.
Community maybe doesn't see it all the time, but um, and then the developer side, right? So I wanted to be the player, but also be the developer as well, and kind of like convince people, like, hey, I'm still you guys, and I still have these same concerns, but honestly, it just
What's
didn't
up,
make sense
fellow
to do
kids?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, exactly. That's uh, exactly. But it really didn't make sense. So I started to try to like distance myself, and also like just take the beatings that the community was willing to dish out or whatever. And I just kind of shrug it off nowadays. Because hey, surprise, on the internet, people are kind of crappy. Uh, but it's also just not worth fighting those fights anymore. So I think that if we keep like moving forward, um, like that'll hopefully end up eventually being like kind of all the evidence that people need.
Sure, sure. And one of the things that I've heard you say is that the way people interact with you is based much more on how well the game is doing than on what you have to
Hmm.
say.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. You can So when people are in good spirits, you could honestly, you could say anything, and people would be like, "Yeah, yeah, we love it." And then if the game is doing poorly, and you're like you're putting in like your heart and soul into this update that's meant to like alleviate issues, or like bring some good back to the game, or just like alleviate concerns of the community, it's like um they'll start complaining about something else, or they'll best case scenarios that they say, why did it take this long to do this? And it's like, okay, well, yeah, I get it, that sucked, but like, can we just start like move ahead?
Yeah.
But I think that's probably a mentality that's just like it's kind of beyond people, when they're like acting emotionally, or just trolly, or under
Hmm.
the veil of anonymity that comes with being an internet individual.
Yeah. I think also too, there's like a limited access thing. Like,
Mm.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, being out in front of the community, people feel like you. It's been interesting. The more I kind of have poked back to see like who you've talked to, what videos that you've been on from other creators and things like that, the more I realize that you are kind of you hang around Planetside. You're on Twitch. You're keeping tabs on things. You're reading the Reddit threads.
Hmm.
Um, it's clear that you've changed when you decide to weigh in and how you do when you do decide to. But you're still very active there, and you're one of the outside of like seeing Alan, and now we're getting these fantastic any time of the week updates from Andy Sites whenever anything is happening.
Hmm.
I'm convinced that guy must not sleep a lot too.
uh I don't know. The guy works so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's clear to me. Um, but how important is it that the community has access to the people who are working on the game? To your mind?
That's a good question that I really don't have the answer for. So so, a long time ago, what was his name? Tony, community manager, can't Radar X. God,
Chat.
I can't remember
Help us
why.
out, chat.
Can't remember his last name for some reason.
Someone will tell us.
Um,
Continue.
yeah, yeah. But he and I did an experiment on Reddit, where we
Oh,
just did not communicate for 30 days. 30 days, solid. No post, no nothing. Uh, and we checked the engagement, with the people who are running Reddit, and there was no difference between like if we engaged or if we didn't engage. Like, people just like to talk. Uh, Granted, at the time, I think something that might skew the numbers is that there was network issues too. They were like a big deal, so there was probably more to talk about then. But like realistically, it's hard to actually determine how much it helps versus how much it hurts. And especially, I think if you look at other games, the the intention uh, the intent to communicate is kind of all over the board.
Mhm.
Like you look at Warframe, who's like very invested in their community, and they're doing all these forums and all these uh, like they're chiming into to posts and everything else.
Weekly streams, giveaways all
Oh
the
yeah,
time,
yeah, and they do a
and
great job. And like I
very
can't express.
centralized too.
Yep, yeah. No, that's so much work and love and effort goes into the game and the community from them. Um, and I wish I knew how much they got out of it, because I think that'd be illuminating for me. But then you look at other games like actually I might be speaking out of turn, but I don't think that like Bungie tends to communicate uh, at least not nearly as much as Warframe does. And even their patch notes are really kind of like vague. Like they're not telling you the individual values that are
They
changing.
have
They're
to
just
really
saying like,
held
oh, this
back.
does less damage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Warframe, they make it kind of feel like you're walking into their kitchen while
Mm,
they're working on the game at the same time. Like they put to your point, a tremendous amount of effort, and they have senior stakeholders on the game from different departments on every single week to share things. Um, I dare say I think that they've been burned a few times, but because they've set an expectation with their community of such high access, and such
yeah.
high
Yep.
agency, that there's a story that you tell when you say come into my kitchen, which implies help me make the dish. And if you don't actually accept the help or the
Mm.
feedback, uh, it's a tough thing. And the idea of a live services video game like a Planetside or a Warframe or something like that, I think is still something. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everyone's still figuring out how the
It's
heck to do it.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Actually, you bring up a good point with kind of the uh, when you don't take people's feedback into consideration, or I'm butchering your verbiage, but a lot of times feedback sucks. So like it's or it doesn't make sense at the time, or like we have no plans to change that, or we are putting things into the game in a certain way now because we know what's coming in the future that we haven't
Right.
like revealed to you yet. There's always like a lot of stuff that's happening in the background, and like us as game developers, like we have to think, kind of years in advance,
Mm.
or else we're, I mean, you get into the point where you're just like living from update to update, and like that's not good. And I know because I've had to do that. Um, but yeah, so like as far as how much value does the community's opinion have, and also like how do you determine it? Like how do you determine what people actually want versus like what's actually healthy for the game? A
Hmm.
lot of times you'll have people who, I mean, they certainly know what they don't like. They may not know why they don't like it, and they most likely don't know the solutions. And even solutions that seem like a good idea uh, could be like seem like a good idea because it's who it's coming from, or because they're not like kind of thinking about like everything else that would actually happen, surrounding it. And you see stuff like that all the time,
Hmm.
and it's like we are all still figuring it out. Like even when it comes like not to just the long term stuff, but the short term stuff as well. How much community interaction you want to have, and like how do you funnel um, like how do you leverage your community uh, into giving you good feedback, like good focused feedback on certain things that you want feedback on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Two things that you just talked about really leapt out at me. One is the fact that when you're taking feedback from the game, you're having to reconcile it against a vision of the game for you that is patches ahead,
Hmm.
which the community doesn't get to see in the same way. That's the first. The second thing is it's something that I've heard elsewhere too, talking about the way communities and developers interact. Is that um, developers don't always know what's wrong with their game, but gamers don't know. While they do know what's wrong, they are not in the best place to know how to address it.
Right.
So you're in the tough spot um, as lead game designer of having to trust what people say is not working, but not be able to necessarily take what they suggest. Because most of the really passionate Planetside players out there have put in thousands of hours. You can't replace that kind of experience. Uh, Like, there aren't that many people, I'm sure, on the dev team who have anywhere close to that kind of experience.
No, just me.
Right. Right. And
Um,
that's something else we can
yeah,
talk
but
about too.
fortunately, I play the game, so like I have a decent understanding of all these issues. Even the ones that like that aren't in my specific sphere of expertise. Like I only use vehicles to an extent. In construction, I hardly ever touch it all.
Hmm.
Because it's just not my play style. But at the same time, because of my knowledge about the game, like I can see where people are coming from, and that's important to have too. Unfortunately, so the double-edged sword here is that when people have extensive time in the game, it also creates a bias. In most cases,
Hmm.
I would say, because they're so like honed in on their specific play style, that they naturally want to protect that play style, or they view things differently. Like, oh, this is cheap because it's killing me in this way or whatever.
Hmm.
And you could. I think one of the cool things about our game is that because there are so many different spheres of influence, when you get them all like talking back and forth to one another, it's very clear that there is no solid answer, which to me seems like hey, the game is relatively balanced. Yeah,
Yeah.
when people aren't like when yeah, when the whole spectrum of people aren't complaining about the same thing, then this is probably it's a pretty good place to be, I think.
Yeah. It makes sense. Uh, I've heard you use the word sandbox to talk about Planetside in the
Mhm.
past, and it's a big three faction game, combined arms, 1,000 different ways to die. And I really like what you just said there about how if not everyone's complaining about the same thing, it means that, well, things are in a relatively, at least if they're unbalanced, they're all still leaning together in a way that it falls together. Some kind of metaphor. I don't know.
I get it.
Thanks, Rel. I hope someone else did too.
One other person in chat. That's it.
Yeah. Shout out to that one person. Um, okay. Wow. So many interesting things to talk about. But I really still want to stay focused on this path that you went down. So bringing it back once again to last time I had asked you how hard it was to keep doing YouTube videos, and you said it got hard over time.
Hmm.
Um, so your video that you announced you were working there was January 2016, and the last video on your channel was, I think, November 2017. So about a year and a half, you kept doing videos. Um, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the transition from being an independent contractor to working there full time. How did that happen?
I so just for clarity's sake, I wasn't an independent contractor per se. Like I think I was actually on the team, like as a, well, nah, maybe that's not right. As a remote contractor. Anyway,
You were
they
remote
told me
though.
that, yeah. Yeah, I was in Connecticut. They basically said that you have to come to California if you want to keep working on the game, and that was due primarily to the fact that like they needed to treat me as an employee based on the amount of control that I had. Usually, when you're doing contract work, I think that the tasks are more well defined, but for me, it was more nebulous, and I had access to a lot of the tools and everything else. So they had to treat me like an employee, and in order for them to do that, due to California law, and hopefully I'm correct on this, I had to at least live somewhere in California. Uh, so
Gotcha.
that's what it came down to. And
Okay.
I wouldn't say that it was an easy decision at all.
You moved your family with you?
No, no. So
Oh wow, that's tough.
yes, which
Wow.
is why it was not an easy decision at all. But yeah, it was. We talked about it, and like the best thing for me was to try to do what I always wanted to do.
Wow. So, Rel, you picked up and went to California. And when you got there, was it any different, or were you just doing the same work in a different place?
Um, so yeah, I think the main thing that was different was just being able to interact with everybody,
Hmm.
like everybody that I already had kind of like. I mean, not even like met everybody. I don't think. I think there was at least a few people that I hadn't, but just to kind of like work alongside people. I don't know. It's like surreal and crazy. And then also,
What were some of the
uh,
highlights?
so,
Who was the most not like you expected out of the whole group?
I can't say that people weren't like what I expected, but there was a lot of
Okay.
really cool personalities there. Like Bill Yates, who now he's up in I think Seattle-ish, working on Cryptic or at
Hmm.
Cryptic right now.
Hmm.
But yeah, he was lead artist at the time, and he has this kind of like I don't know, just like he's just a really happy, like jovial dude. So that was fun to be around. And then there was like people that I didn't get to spend too much time with. Red Daughter had he was a UI programmer, and he had left shortly after I got there. Um, and I would remember like him, chiming into certain Reddit threads and that sort of thing, and I
Hmm.
thought that was cool. So it's just like, yeah, it was just cool. Like I actually live in it, but like because I had kind of already been doing the work, uh, what I really enjoyed is that I can go there anytime in the morning and just do work.
Hmm.
Like I was there at like 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, um, and just like just making things, and it was I love it so much.
It sounds like it was a real I don't know, like a liberation. Like you were there on your own, like, and I'm sure that posed challenges of its own. But being there
Mhm.
by yourself on your own steam and being having access to everything. What kind of problems or initiatives were you most excited to work on at that stage?
Ooh, so when I got there, uh, if I'm remembering the timetable correctly, that was like I didn't actually get to spend too much time working with Kebmo and Burness, both of which I had admiration for,
Hmm.
because they were moved off to a different project. I think they moved off to H1Z1 at the time,
Right.
because that was when like H1Z1 was just going off the charts, and they were like king of the genre, and everybody's popping champagne bottles and whatever else. I don't know if that actually happened. It probably did. I imagine so. But basically, like it was like put all the chips into H1Z1, which included a lot of people from Planetside, the Planetside 2 team, and uh, and I was new, uh, like there, and then Nick was he got there shortly after me. Paul Giaggio was actually there before me, working in house, and then it was just us three. It's just like, okay, make the game go. And we're all learning too,
Holy shit.
and that was just the core team. Like we still got some support uh, from like art support from Bishop or from Bill, or I think maybe project management support from Jason Good.
Hmm.
Uh, is so like we weren't just like left flapping, but Nick was like taking on the product management role, and then Paul had actually been he was actually recruited to work on a different game, but he ended up getting kind of stuck on Planetside 2, and I'm glad that he did, because he is he likes to figure things out, and I think he was doing pretty well. Like kind of like
That kind
given
of self-driven
our
quality.
position.
Hmm.
Yeah. For like when he has something that he wants to do, it's just like he'll figure it out. And he's a really good shepherd of the code base too, which given
Ah,
the history of the game, there's been a lot of coders at different points throughout the history. So he was really trying to drive it forward, and create something better, from then on out.
wow.
Yeah.
So three people
Hmm.
who you were the only three people who were working full time on Planetside. You had help from outside,
Hmm.
from other specialties, let's say coding, art, PM, like you said. But it was you three guys at the core. Um, how hard was it at that time to? I don't even know how to formulate this question. I just can't imagine working on a game the size of Planetside with three people. I have more people than that on my team, and we do
Yeah.
something a lot smaller than Planetside, and it feels pretty hard.
So I don't think it was hard. I think it was frustrating, um, because like anytime you have ambition, you know, and don't have the resources to accomplish it, it's like kind of a kick in the nuts. But like we, just kept doing and kept making, uh, and we wanted to grow the game out, and I think we did, or like at the very least staunch the bleeding, which was like one of my goals at the time. And yeah, I think toward the start, if I'm remembering correctly, like I was doing a lot of quality of life stuff, and I was doing a lot of it's kind of like lower key stuff,
Hmm.
and like all the new events for holiday directives, like updating those, like that wasn't a thing that happened. You had the
Hmm.
same Halloween event for 4 years or whatever it was.
Right.
uh just like so kind of taking it slow, but also doing like big updates in any way that we could do big
Hmm.
updates. Actually, I know you got a bullet point talking about combined arms, but that actually was with when I had Burness and Kevmo available, and that's like basically all we had was design, design work or design resources.
So you couldn't put new vehicles in the game. You couldn't implement new major systems. All you could do as a designer at that point is, well, come up with good ideas and maybe play with numbers. It sounds like maybe I'm reducing it a little bit.
Yeah, so it's certainly not numbers. Like a designer has a lot of power depending on the skill sets that they have.
Okay.
Like I can, for example, create a weapon in 3D art, um, and then put it into, like, get it processed and put it into the game and create the icons and then create all the stats for it, and then create the particle effects for it, and then put it into the game,
Wow.
and also
Okay.
like all the marketing data, and then the event that it's tied to. So Little Helper is an example of a really horrible looking 3D model, but there's been other stuff too, like the anniversary stuff. A lot of those things I did, and it's like some
Okay.
of the best selling stuff, and it was just like just me over like a weekend, or like
That's
or
pretty
a week,
cool.
I think. Yeah, no, I mean, so like you have a lot of power depending on the skill set.
Gotcha.
uh it's more like how good are you at those things. Like if I was really good at 3D modeling, like I could probably get a lot more done,
Hmm.
and not for lack of trying. It's difficult, and it requires people who know what they're doing more than me. uh yeah, like all the camos, do the art in Photoshop, and change all the reflective values and that sort of thing, and
Hmm.
make it super
So
spicy. Yeah,
so a small number of people. You did
hmm
have some ability on the team, but it's not the same if you have, like, say, compare it to what you're working with today, where it seems like you have
yeah,
a lot more specialist talent just ready to go when you need it.
right. Yeah, the
Hmm.
people that we're working with now are they have been there for quite a while. The majority of the team, like vast majority of the team, a lot of which worked on Planetside 2 back before H1Z1, and then moved on to that, and then on to Arena, and then back to
Wow.
Planetside 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot of history, a lot of experience. Like everybody is like super dedicated. I'm very, very happy to have the team that we have. Like everybody there is a rock star, so far as I'm concerned.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, well, like one of the benefits that you have is obviously more people, but obviously um, people who are specializing in those roles too. So like you just get a better end product. So like
Yeah.
for example, the Bastion, like well, like not just the model and everything, because that was uh, done originally in PSA, but then we like redid it for Planetside 2. But like
Hmm.
the explosions that come off of it, like on the thing it blows up, it's like it's
Hmm.
beautiful, gorgeous, and then all the audio work and everything else, like I can't do that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's great watching
so
those things
there's like
blow up.
yeah. Um, yeah, so like more hands is helpful, and then more like specialized people is like super helpful.
Hmm.
So and that's what game development should actually look like. Shouldn't shouldn't look like just us trying to make it go.
Hmm. So when you were trying to make it go, you used the word staunch the bleeding.
Hmm
What bleeding needed to be staunched?
Uh, so over time, I mean, all games tend to go this route unless you get some really cool reversals like Rainbow Six Siege or Warframe. But they decline in play rates, right? They're new and shiny when they come out, And then people, for various numerous reasons, leave the game. Excuse me. Could be that there's something else that grabs their attention. It could be that you know uh, their computer can't handle it, or it could be that their group of friends has left, so they then leave. It could be that there's an itch that is no longer being scratched, or like they don't like the direction the game is going, or like there's just a handful of bugs that like constantly just pressure them into just like not dealing with it anymore.
Hmm.
And then it could be the new player experience. Like we get loads of new players through the door every day, but can't retain them. And that's been a game or an issue that's plagued the game for the entirety of its life cycle.
Hmm.
And when it comes to increasing populations over time, which is my goal, it is like a lot of it does come down to the new players, because the more you can retain, the more healthy that game will be, and then health kind of fuels itself too. Like once you have more people playing the game, more people are content to play the game.
Hmm.
So
So you mentioned Combined Arms Initiative just a few minutes ago. You talked about staunching the bleeding, new player experience. Are these things connected?
um yes. So given the at the time, so it was us, three designers. um we had to decide what we wanted to work on. So the different interacting domains, air, vehicles, ground, or air, vehicles, infantry rather, has always been viewed as a problem. I don't think that Combined Arms had the right solutions, but had the right intent.
Which was?
It was a handful of goals. The first was to make it so vehicle combat was not like it didn't just exist to exist, which I think farming infantry like was just a thing that vehicles did. Like it used to be a Hesh vehicle like on every mountaintop, just
Yeah.
shelling into to points. And like if we were able to give them goals, like potentially we could help like reroute them and give them like a reason to be in vehicles too. It was kind of the goal should be that infantry like primarily are what happens at the bases, and then like everything between the bases is like
Hmm.
governed by the vehicles. That's just where like they're
So
kind of like
different
apex
actual
predators.
spatial domains.
Right.
Here,
Um,
infantry, they're vehicles.
right. Yeah, and I think like some of that we hit, some of it we didn't. When it came to like for the time to kill increases, for example,
Hmm.
a lot of that had to do with the thought that vehicles get destroyed um, faster than anybody can react to them, especially just like high skill level players. Like they know where to ambush you from, or they're just like know how to aim better. That because honestly, vehicles aren't difficult to control, but they can be difficult to control. So depending on whose hands are in.
Hmm.
So the thought was that if you increase that time to kill over time, that it'd be a back and forth at least for a little bit, and the high skill player would still have the advantage, of course, because of where they attacked you from, and just the inherent skill advantages that come along with that.
Hmm.
Um, but it really slowed down to the game to the point where it was just like more trouble than it's worth.
Hmm.
I think at the end of it. So walked back those changes, a lot of combined arms changes over like the next year, and it was month after month after month of changes, and a lot of good stuff came out of it too. Like I don't know who's going to remember this, but Vanguard used to be much slower. Like I think Prowler used to be slower. Uh, the controls of vehicles actually got better and less butter sloped than they used to be, uh, and that was due to putting like a wheel at the center of each of the tanks instead of just the six on the side. And like there was changes to make things like not tip over, as much as they
Hmm.
did, and like just a lot of, I mean, thermals was removed, which was a big. I think it's still kind of a point of contention, just because vehicles like to farm people, and there's like a power fantasy that's like trying to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
But thermals was a big, like take that away, and then people actually have to try, to
Yeah.
kill infantry instead of just being able to so easily designate those targets.
Yeah. So thermals, for those who don't know, was a toggle you could have right? If you're in a vehicle and if you had the right equipment, where it would essentially monochrome out everything except for infantry.
Right.
Did it also, I don't actually remember. I'm also not a vehicle player. Um, did it also highlight vehicles or just infantry players?
Highlights vehicles as well.
Okay. So
Pretty sure. Yeah, I'm
anything
pretty
you
sure.
might want to shoot would get highlighted,
Right.
right? And why did that tilt the gameplay towards infantry farming?
And alongside that, um, well, okay, to your point, uh, it is very easy to see like when the contrast is there, than if you're like trying to look through trees and just other noisy characteristics, uh, or like people who are just like they just blend in when people normally
Mm-hmm.
are like up against a wall or like in a shadow or anything else, and that having to actually look for your prey is it was a big deal, and that was shown like yeah. Like so
Iron V scopes are still in the game for infantry, right?
yes, infantry versus infantry. um
So that's not a problem to your mind compared to the vehicle thing. I'm actually
It has
asking because I don't
downsides
know.
associated with it. Yeah, yeah. People don't tend to use it because it's a slower draw time
Right.
to, and that matters a lot. So like as soon as you can, like the quicker you can snap aim on somebody, then uh, the easier it is to like when you're coming out of a sprint, for example, and then you snap to the head, and it's just it's the quickest way to kill people. But the additional and downsides time is detrimental for people like at least at a high skill.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's certain strategies that can take advantage of it, of course, like smoke
Mm-hmm.
was a good one. Yeah. In regards to thermals, like another thing to point out is just when you're in the trees of Hassan, for example, seeing something that's yellow stands out immediately. When
Hmm.
you're kind of up in the brush or whatever, it's the difference is night and day, truly.
Right.
And then we also made explosions weaker, so that it wasn't as rewarding. Like now you need two shots, with the splash instead of the one shot splash, which
Mm-hmm.
was on pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So combined arms, yeah, it's definitely one of those things that the community likes to bring back up.
Hmm.
And hearing you talk about how it had good intentions, but maybe didn't quite hit the mark. Um, Man, I get that. And that's a tough thing to do. And you've I think really had to live with that. Because you were at the front of the team when that was happening. You were new to the team and people knew you as a YouTuber,
Hmm.
and you engage with the community, and you, I think, have become, because people know you, they remember you and you see your YouTube videos, kind of a lightning rod for that negative feedback.
Yeah, yeah, and it sucks not having like multiple people to talk to. So if it's always just coming out of my mouth, then it's like there's some baggage that comes along with that. Um, so it was good when like Nick would chime in on certain
Yeah.
things, or when Roxy would chime in on some of the community related stuff. Um, and yeah, and it's nice to have Andy now, and it's nice to have the other people who are willing to like share
Mhm.
stuff. So it helps take some of the focus off, but at the same time, I feel like our relationship is probably much better nowadays too than it used to be. Because that was like I was back there during a time when the game wasn't it really wasn't doing so hot, and it didn't have
Mhm.
a whole lot going for it either.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
being able to turn that around was nice.
In your uh the last video you put on YouTube, 5 years of Planetside it's called. You had a pretty great spirit to it. And it really, if you go back and watch it, then you hear you talking as though it's like you just come out of a major conflict almost. Like you saw greener pastures ahead. You talked about how the dev team was doubling up to a unimaginable size of
Just
6.
right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You talked about plans for then 2018, which was coming up. And you said that things were now in place so that the game could grow. I
Hmm.
wonder if you could talk about some of the things that happened leading up to that video that put you in that position? What was that team of 3 able to accomplish that moved the needle?
It's a good question. It was so long ago. Implants was definitely a big thing that we did, like completely reversed the financial trajectory of the game,
Mm-hmm.
and also just made the system better because it sucked. And that continues to be like something that helps sustain us financially. So like that is, I'm downplaying it a little bit, but it was really really important. And in doing so, like because of like that system and some of the other stuff that we're doing, like we were able to hire on 3 people,
Mm-hmm.
and like one of which was a UI programmer, which we didn't have.
Need
Actually,
that.
yeah, well, one of the other UI programmers was helping us with the implants implementation, but that was on temporary loan. So just
Mm-hmm.
clarify. Yeah, and then we picked up another programmer, we picked up another designer, and like we were in good shape, at least, or so I thought.
Sure.
But
Sure.
as ambitions increase, and then also the ramp up time, it's like the ramp up time is pretty substantial for this for this game, and then just like especially the code base and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So the time it takes from,
yeah,
from the day someone comes on, joins the team, to the time that they're really independent and able to get things
right,
done efficiently.
that's correct.
Right. Makes sense. Um, so for those who don't know, or who are listening to this and maybe don't know a lot about Planetside, the one of you out there, implants are each character has 2 implant slots in Planetside, and the way you acquire implants is a bit varied. It's a little complicated. One of the systems more complicated. One of the game's more complicated, I think, systems in some ways. You can work towards some implants with ISO, right? And I think that major iteration you're describing included the introduction of ISO, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
remembering that right.
Yep.
It's another currency alongside certifications, and there's some way to exchange certifications for ISO. There's some currency trading, not directly, but that you can do there. You can buy the same things with different currencies. But when you're buying an implant, you're not, unless you're using ISO, which is a slow to accumulate currency, which you can get for totally for free. Another way to get those is to buy them in what is essentially a loot box. And I'm sure that's when you talk about the success, that's where that came from.
Yeah.
Looking back at that system now, its success is hard to deny. There's a lot of talk going on in the world of gaming today about loot boxes being on the outs, about impending
Oh yeah.
regulation.
Yeah.
Um, are you guys paying attention to that stuff with regard to implants specifically, and with future monetization efforts?
I would say paying attention to it, yes. Um, and if the time comes that we need to pivot, in some way, I think we'll have to figure out a strategy for it. Because yeah, I mean it's a it's a big deal. I mean, depending on who you talk to.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we kind of our community was very accepting, like unusually accepting of implants and a loot crate model. Uh, and I think that a lot of that came from the fact that the system was just so bad to begin with. Uh, like we got rid of energy, which was like it
Oh
was a
yeah.
mechanic to basically drain your wallet, or you don't get to perform it at peak capacity, and totally pivoted away from that. And it's just like, hey, now it's a progression system like everything else in the game. Um, and so that's probably where a lot of that goodwill came from. But then also I was trying to be straight with people, like at every point where it's like yes, this is a monetization system. This is what we're putting into the game, and you'll be able to purchase these implants with your scummy loot box practices. So,
Wink, wink, nudge,
uh,
nudge.
right, yeah. My opinion on loot boxes is kind of it's a little back and forth. I think ideally there's cosmetics, right? But I don't think that it does uh, nearly as much for a game, that because people are just willing to pay for power. But one of the goals that I had personally was to make it so like you don't have to suffer through the loot box system. You can just buy the implants outright, and that's when crafting came into to be. And I think that happened maybe a year or a little bit less.
Oh, wow.
Somebody can correct me if I'm
I don't
wrong.
remember it being that so far apart. Okay, so it was
Yeah, no,
pure
it was quite a while.
RNG for quite a while.
Hmm.
Huh.
Yeah, and even now you can't buy exceptionals, but that'll be changing in the next update. Um,
Oh.
yeah, uh,
That's good.
surprise.
Nice to know.
Yeah, just throwing that in there. And it's also making good on a promise that I made quite a while ago, where I definitely wanted it to come with Sanctuary, but it didn't make sense at the time. So
Sure. I'm really thrilled to hear that, Rel, because
yeah,
I think for people from the outside looking in, it's seeing how awesome Bastions are and seeing how cool Outfit Wars looks like. One of the things people will scan for right at the beginning is how much of this game is RNG, how much of this game is going to force me to waste my time, and even if the practical benefit you get from that RNG engagement is not that significant, or even if they really are edge case situations, just merely having that randomness, I think, is a risk for attracting new people. Probably, I know a lot of my friends will look at that and say, "Oh, this is a loot box for power. I'm not even going to engage at all." So having a
yeah.
way to say, "Nope, um, loot boxes are optional," is, I think, huge, and I'm relieved to hear that it's coming soon.
So I think it's kind of an interesting point of discussion because I think that the loot box system is probably I think it's obfuscated enough to where people won't say like immediately that something is pay to win unless that's kind of the concession that they're or the preconception that they're entering the game
A
with anyway.
bias.
Like
Hmm.
people, yeah, because like you'll get killed by something and it's like this guy has better gear than me, and probably not the case, or it is, but it doesn't matter, so it's probably just like a deeply held opinion that they have, based on um, their experience or the skill level or whatever it is. Uh, but then also like we have made efforts to like standardize the play space, at least with one loadout. Like everybody has safeguard and everybody has target focus, which are both good implants for new
Hmm.
players.
Hmm.
Target focus I still use like on a bunch of stuff, uh, and then we also like started giving packs out for alert wins and for directives and everything else. So we didn't make it inaccessible.
Hmm.
uh, and I think the people who kind of uh, like the community members who are a part of like have experience in those systems, they're kind of like advocates for like hey, like this is probably the only like pseudo pay to win thing about the game,
Hmm.
but it's not a big deal, and like that's kind of the place that you want to be,
Mm.
for like you want the community to be at your back, regardless of what you're doing, and monetization practices.
Yeah. They're
Uh,
knocking at your door with pitchforks. They're giving you a nudge and like, "Hey, man, maybe take care of this." That kind of.
right, yeah, no, and that was definitely one of my goals, is to kind of like remove the even the argument for the pay to win
Yes.
element. Yeah, like I don't think it's as big. Like I don't take it as seriously as
Okay.
other people. Like I know that other people will say like, hey, there's some RNG in this game, but sometimes like to me that feels good. Um,
Well,
but
yeah,
I
it goes
totally know
back
that's not the case for
to
everybody.
the whole idea of grinding, which
Right.
is the
Yeah.
kind of the
Mhm.
MMO spirit bubbling up from the earth
Yeah.
of Araxis.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's funny how people don't like they don't make that connection because it's not. It doesn't tend to be like do this and then kind of like in the ranges of what you're going to get and then you get the thing,
mhm.
and then do that over and over. It's more like because it is a currency interaction, I think it feels different. Like it
Yeah.
feels more like gambling, or it feels more like just like wasting money, I guess, when you throw stuff in and then don't get what you want.
Mhm. Or
But if it's
certs, which can take a long
yeah,
time to grind,
yep,
especially if you're playing totally for free. But if you're
yeah,
playing for free, I mean, hey,
right,
interesting. Yeah. Well, I think that's a really interesting take on that RNG aspect of it. And certainly, I mean, randomness is a part of any MMO. You look at anything. I don't know. Sometimes I think if Planetside had a dragon or two to kill, people would better understand
right,
that
right,
that part of it, because It's not
Yeah.
as much on the surface, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, presentation is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
What were we
continuing
talking
the
about?
story. Continuing the story of Rel,
You
the
always have to
epic,
bring me back.
the epic of Rel. Oh no, this is the way I prefer to do this, man.
Okay, that's good.
Um, I don't. I mean, you saw. I sent you a bunch of questions we might talk about, and we ping pong all around as I promised we would. My goal is to have a conversation, which I think we're doing, and but this story is super important. I think. It's an interesting one, and you being in the position you are, people should know about it. Um, After this video you published at the end of 2017, 5 years of Planetside, you said something very interesting at the end of it that I wrote out here. You signed off that video with a really passionate kind of speech about we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, new player experience and outfits and all
Mhm.
these great things. And then you kind of chuckled and said, unless management throws a monkey wrench at us.
Right.
So in
Uh,
2018, did that happen?
Probably. I think it's happened at probably every turn that the game has had.
Okay.
Um, yeah, yeah. There was a lot of the just the history in general is kind of tumultuous. So you could have the best intentions, but sometimes things don't work out. And I wouldn't even say that's all like entirely management's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Wink, wink.
Mm-hmm.
But no, like a lot of it came down to just like sometimes you one of the problems that I have, I think, is being too ambitious. So I like have a really large scope, and then we have a really small team. So uh, things take longer than they probably should, and then there's always the roadblocks, which were unaccounted for at the time. And yeah, it was quite the learning experience. I've learned a lot in almost 4 years now.
Wow. 4 years, man.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be 4 years in October is when I officially came down here.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, that year of 2018. In my notes, I don't have a lot to say about it until the very end of it, when a very interesting pivot in Planetside happened, which was uh, a round of layoffs, um, forever subscriptions, and the announcement of Planetside Arena.
Hmm.
So, how did the announcement of Planetside Arena affect how you worked on Planetside 2?
Uh, so I think that there was a lot of potential good that could have come out of Arena. Like there were some like intentions to like co-develop the games side by side, and that like helped get us DX11. Like it
Mm-hmm.
doing Arena was a good excuse for us to get DX11, and I say excuse because you need. So here's the thing. Um, when it comes to creating like a successful game, a lot of that success is measured in financials.
Yeah.
And like we as developers need to balance the needs of the community with the needs of the company and the needs of the game as well. Uh, and that mean like the community needs to be like feel like energized and or placated or whatever. Company needs to have the cheddar, and then the game needs to go where we want it to go. Like if we have a goal and a vision for where we want to take it. And a lot of times, well, I shouldn't say a lot of times. Sometimes those things don't mesh up. And for us, like Planetside Arena, like we weren't making. I would say, like we definitely weren't making enough money to say like, ah, yes, DX11, please do this. Your game has a bright shining future ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, it was more like you guys are doing a good job over here. So like just do that. Like that was what our team was. Um, so like whatever we could get from Arena was like a good thing for us. And DX11 was a big part of that. Came over to the game. Unfortunately, just given the kind of the rigors of developing Arena, like we didn't have the support to like fix all the issues that came with the X11,
Mm.
and it left Planetside 2 in a really crappy state.
Mm-hmm.
And then leading up to that, just the development. Before that, there was like 6 months without good content for Planetside 2. and that was very detrimental to the game. And a lot of that was like kind of banking our development on like what was happening with Arena, but there was
Mm.
like there was a lot of like, I don't want to get into it, but there was a lot of stuff happening on that project, completely separate from us, and where it probably like if I like know now what I wait if I knew then what I know now, we probably would have went a different direction with Planetside 2, and like maybe not invested so heavily in these like specific, like the specific things, the content that we're trying to do. I think NS or Black Ops, like we probably wouldn't
Right.
even have done it. And then that was like the big hand wavy thing that came along with DX11. So like those two things probably just would have went a different direction,
Mm.
honestly. And then like when things were stabilized on the other team, like we could have then started to integrate it. But we were trying to like hit our beat to fix fix the trajectory of the game. But unfortunately, like just due to kind of the this collision of factors, it just didn't play out that way. So, and that happens. I mean, you take your you place your bets on what you think you should do, and sometimes those pay out and sometimes they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it totally makes sense. I think looking back at it, it's pretty easy to see um, the connection between the two games, and maybe how there was well, I mean, like you said, you have to develop a few patches out. And when
Mm-hmm.
there's a new game and you're sharing team members with that new game, there's expectations of success and uh, and honestly, just dollar signs that come with that. And when things don't go that way, and Planetside Arena, don't want to hash it out because I know you're not the guy, but it just did not seem to catch.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So, okay. I talked about a sequence of events at the end of 2018. I want to fast forward now to the end of 2019, where a few things happened, kind of in an order that I think seems connected, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. First thing is big round of layoffs in October. Next thing that happened is the announcement that Planetside Arena is shutting down. That was in December, I think. And then in January, Rogue Planet Games gets announced. And there's a big letter from Andy Seitz, and he teases out the magic word Planetside 3, which we don't have to talk about right now. But
Or ever.
or
Maybe.
ever. Oh, man.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a history-laden statement to me.
No,
But
no.
are these can you take us through those events at the end of that year, the events leading up to Rogue Planet happening? What was that like for you?
That was such a blur. Yeah, so Arena is kind of doing their thing, and then God, just the timing with like Apex Legends and everything else was
Yes.
uh yeah, it's
So for those who don't know, originally, Planetside Arena was set to debut at the end of January 2019. It was delayed to March, and then immediately after that announcement was made, Apex Legends just came out. A huge, incredibly well polished battle royale game, which is exactly what Arena was part of what Arena was trying to do. Um, and then things seemed to go back to the drawing board, and then eventually, like we said, that just didn't catch. But sorry, continue. Please continue.
yeah. And there's there's a whole lot encapsulated in there that I totally don't want to talk about.
Fair enough.
And it's not my place to do that. But
Yeah.
the so see on our team, we're kind of just like trying to keep things going, like trying to resolve. Like I think honestly, fixing DX11 bugs took the vast majority of our time, like for a long amount of time.
Wow.
And then NSO too was just like it was a lot of work to try to alleviate. Like it still has issues,
Hmm.
and at the same time, like trying to keep up the some sort of content cadence. Like we're doing the summer stuff and just like events in general, and keeping all that going. But I think at the end of the day, like what it came down to is that in typical kind of like corporate fashion is like, things needed to be cut somewhere, and then some decisions were made, and then, surprise, layoffs happened. So for my team in particular, it was really kind of heartbreaking,
Hmm.
because we had survived a fair amount of layoffs. I think, maybe two prior or something like that, and we're kind of always looked at as like you have such a small team and you're able to do so much, and maybe the community would disagree, but if you go back and look at all the patch notes, like we did a lot over the
Hmm.
years, and especially given our team size. And so as far as like net profit, we were doing very well for a long period of time, and then there was that slowdown toward the end of the year, and then how much of that factors in, I don't know. But yeah, so I end up losing Drew and Paul and Garrett too. So it's just oh, I'm sorry, no, it was yeah, no, it was Drew, Paul, Garrett, Nick, and it was just me and Zach left.
Wow.
And that was weird. So
Yeah.
yeah, uh,
Okay.
and yeah, I cried. uh, I did. People, especially around the
Yeah.
office, I'm very kind of stoic most of the time, and I think my team at the time like totally like rarely ever see me eschew emotion. So yeah, so that happened.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
yeah.
That's rough. So Rel literally, and I'm not trying to make fun of you, but literally in tears. And then 3 months later, Rogue Planet Games is a thing, and your team is 10 times that size.
Right.
How connect these things for me?
I mean, what it came down to is that there was a lot of more experienced people from the arena team that is not like, so one of the things that I think is important is that you kind of hire for like experience and then skill,
Hmm.
not necessarily like the job roles that you need at the time. I mean that's at least my
Hire the
mentality. And I think
person,
it was,
not the job. That kind of idea.
yeah, I think that was Daybreak's mentality, kind of early on too. But yeah, like once it's like actually really difficult to hire, at least like especially on a game this old.
Hmm.
Uh, so you have a whole bunch of people who still totally you want to hang around, and they get rolled into Planetside too. And then we're like in the lab, just coming up with the next big thing. And Escalation was a culmination of like 5 months of work.
Ah, that was one of
So
my questions.
yeah, so that
Huge
was like,
update.
yeah, we weren't Rogue Planet Studios, publicly for quite a while,
Uh-huh.
after the team got rolled into Planetside 2.
Okay.
So we were able, yeah, we're just like we're doing stuff, just lots of work and lots of discussions, and there was like a lot of, I don't know, just like a lot of new blood and excitement. I say new blood, but it's um for me it was all new.
Well, it was new creative
So
energy because you were bringing people who
yeah,
hadn't been working together on the same things to work on
yeah,
together on this thing called Planetside, and I
yeah.
respect that. So yeah,
But
5 months to get escalation out the door, which is Outfit Wars, the War Asset System, the
mhm,
Bastion.
yeah,
Um, I don't know if I've ever seen people. I like most Planetside players. I've always been getting my friends to try to play Planetside,
it's
and I think,
impossible.
well, and this is a conversation we can have. I heard you say something about the NPE sucking. I don't know. I think players are smart to some degree. I think they know if they're up for it. I think it's hard to tell why you die in Planetside sometimes, but it's kind of easy to tell what the game's about. Um, and yeah, so I respect when my friends tell me they don't want to play it, and it's not because they just don't know what's good about it. It's because they can figure it out. At least that's my feeling about it.
I find that it's easier to introduce people to the game when you're not playing it with them, and I think that kind of, at least that's just my experience, and it kind of, I think it could probably be one of two things. It's like you have a person who likes to learn stuff by themselves and is just kind of better in that environment. Actually, no, that's probably the main thing. Forget where else I was going with this,
So
but I think that
introduce
helps too.
someone at a pace that's more newbie flavored as opposed to dragging someone along, kind of you as the grizzled veteran.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of it. Like even if you try to dumb down the experience for them, it's unlikely. I think that they'll stay. Thank you, Madman. That is sorry, I'm checking chat. That
Big
is
man, laying it down. Holy
that's way
shit.
better than that dumpster fire of the chat that you guys had going on.
Hype. All right.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Um, yeah. I just think that the game is kind of it's very particular. With like you have to be willing to take your knocks,
Mm-hmm.
and that's part of the learning process. And people who don't learn that way or just get frustrated after dying, I think that they probably just they won't stick around. And
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we'll be able to kind of like there's a lot of information around there. Like, and who knows if a tutorial can even like really move things in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But we should have a tutorial, right? I think that's just like fundamentally probably a good idea, at least to try. And actually, like we removed the tutorial as an experiment during escalation.
That's the one where you get dropped into the
Or
hallway and you have to duck under the thing, and then
right,
yeah, okay.
yeah. That it's just like here's how you move. And it's like okay, well, thank you, person. And then people who know how to move, they're just like seeing different blocks of text that they totally don't hear or read or whatever. Um,
You know what's
and it's
funny is
like,
half the time I do that tutorial, I get lost, and I know how to play the game.
it's probably because it's broken. Like you know, it's probably just wind up in
Maybe.
a spot where it's broken. Um, but yeah, like so hopefully we can try to move that to a right direction. But I
Okay.
think the tutorial certainly needs to be better.
Hmm.
And then and I was getting to this before, but we turned off the tutorial as an experiment, and it did reduce retention. So like we know it does something.
Okay.
Um, Probably doesn't do enough, but it is a good thing to have. So like if we can make a better one,
Yeah.
which is totally on the to-do list, and it's like a much more real part of the to-do list than it was. So hopefully so
Yeah.
hopefully we get to that in about 8 years.
Yeah. Here's hoping for Planetside 2 in 2030. New player
Right.
experience.
Yeah.
Um, but okay, joking aside, um, so there's clearly a floor on how bad the tutorial can be, which you showed statistically, the escalation update. Is there a ceiling?
To, sorry, how do you phrase it? Or
I guess I have a sense that there's a ceiling on how effective a tutorial can be for a game like Planetside.
oh yeah. No, I would imagine. And it's hard to say what that ceiling is because we certainly haven't hit it.
Hmm.
Would be my thought, just based on how objectively awful that tutorial was. Um, but it's something that we could like we need to try to do it justice, and then like if we need to reel it back or if we need to go a different direction, that's easier to do. Once you actually have the thing in its entirety, um, and it's something that you feel good about. I think the main points that you want to hit though with the tutorial is that you want the player to. So first off, you want to immerse the player into like what world they're going to be participating in,
Mm-hmm.
but do so in such a way where it's not like a Star Wars, scrolling text or whatever, and like explain it to you. Like you have to feel it, and it also has to be enjoyable to go through. Like it's like go to the bulletin board, look at all the jobs to make the money, to get the tickets. Nobody's going to get that reference, but it's fine. Um, uh, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So, new player experience. A lot of stuff that came in with escalation certainly supports this. Sanctuary. Um, Sanctuary is a thing I'm really excited about. Um, and from hearing you guys and the team talk about it, I think you guys are too.
it's so right now it's very lackluster, and I think everybody who's played is kind of like it has a it exists, but doesn't have a reason to yet. So with
Mm-hmm.
the next update, we definitely want to, kind of incorporate that a fair amount and kind of make it part of the core loop. So like ideally players would log into to Sanctuary, but right now it doesn't make sense because there's no reason to log in, therefore, right? You're not like going there to level up, or you're not doing whatever it is that
You need town
decrypting
functions,
engrams or whatever.
essentially,
Yeah,
like in an
yeah,
MMO.
yeah, exactly. So that's at least in some part of the next update. And then like they go in there and they get their missions or whatever, and then you go to the battlefield and you do your stuff, and you have your core shooting man's experience, and then when you leave, before you log off for the night, you go back. Like that should be the loop. It's like a rest. God, can't remember the name for it.
It's
but
like
yeah, that's the core
like a
loop.
pacing thing.
Right. Yeah, and this game in general has it's always been kind of fast, but I think it's only gotten faster over time. And honestly, like some of the slower paced forms of gameplay are what helps people become acclimated with the environment. So like construction is like, as much as people trash on construction, like it's a really important part of the experience for some players,
Yeah.
when you can kind of just like roam around and do stuff that isn't necessarily combat related. It's good for learning. And I think that people don't tend to admit that that you can't just get good. Like it's not something that that happens overnight. It's not even something that you inherit from other shooters necessarily, but it is something that like takes observation, and people learn at different rates too. So and in different ways. Some people are content to just get trashed on. Some people need to see what's happening, and then like go through the process. And a lot of times, like the reason that, or one of the reasons that new players like gravitate toward the infiltrator class is because they know that they can be safe,
Yeah.
and they can also get kills too. So that bolter that's in the open field where they totally, maybe shouldn't be, or you don't expect them to be, like that's like a great thing for new players. And so those forms of gameplay are important, and we want to make sure that there's like these proper exit points and just areas of rest. When people are kind of going through this experience, and you maybe don't need to, but for like the veterans, but for everybody else, like yeah, it's important.
I like it for veterans too. I mean, I'm an old school. I'm not sure if playing Vanilla WoW is an old school MMO player, but
Close enough.
I mean, I did the MMO thing. So my gaming resume basically starts in around 2000 with a game called Team Fortress Classic, mod for Half-Life 1. I played in a community organized competitive scene for it. It's a shooter game, class-based, capture the flag, etc. Kind of some of the same DNA to a game that I know you have some history with Tribes too. I basically, after the clan that I ran for 3 years died, I moved to playing World of Warcraft, and that sucked me in for a few years. And in that game, I had the great pleasure of running a 40-man raid guild for a while, which was equal parts awful and great.
Yeah, it's impressive. It's difficult.
Yeah, it was quite an undertaking. But when you're engaged in a game like that, you're not always slaying trolls or slaying dragons. Especially if you're running a raid, you are spending a lot of time organizing people, talking to people, and it's not just like I have to find people to run a dungeon with kind of thing. It's like you're actually kind of networking. There's I think like the thing that describes an MMO quality to me is that the game is bigger than the mechanics. Like there's a world within this executable that you can access when you load it up. And when I see something like Sanctuary come to the game, I see that world start to take shape. And when I see storms on Esamir, I see that world start to take shape. That quality is something I love to see come more into Planetside. And also, another thing I was super, super happy about, and I've said this before, but Outfit Wars, which you can pick it apart and talk about what it is specifically, but not at the non-specific level, at the highest level, it gives communities a reason to pull towards something.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's intentionally sized for midfits. Well, I should take that back. I'm not sure, but it seems logical to me. Um, and we can talk about the impact of outfit and new player interactions, right? But to me, as an outsider, it seems what I tell anyone who wants to get into Planetside, whether they're going to play with me or not, is find an outfit that is not enormous and just play with them.
Mm-hmm.
That social component of it seems really critical to me, and I've been going off for a little while. So either I've lost you or you really agree with me.
No, I do agree with you because statistically, we found that like the players tend to stick around more once they're in outfits. The retention goes up. So, and that was kind of the impetus for, or one of the goals rather, for the escalation update, is that instead of outfits being like a glorified friends list, let's try to give them an objective so that they can interact more with their, with their little social bubbles or whatever. And then also so that like new players would have more of a reason, I guess, to like gravitate towards those outfits, and like outfits would be willing to like find and recruit new players and that sort of thing. Then as far as end game goals was kind of what Outfit Wars was for us, an objective at least, is to give everybody again something to strive for. Maybe it doesn't appeal to everybody, but that's kind of the point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't speak for everybody, but I, in my dotage, have become this kind of a player who likes to engage in big community games that have aspirational content.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say aspirational, I mean stuff that's hard, that not everyone gets to do. I remember back in I want to say early 2015, late 2014, when the Farmers League was a thing, which was a community organized competitive 6 versus 6 Planetside Infantry League. Shout out to PIL, by the way. You guys are doing awesome work this year. Fantastic event. But when I was back in the day, that watching the Farmers League inspired me to log on every day and play. It inspired me. It called me forth to become a better player, to engage. It's like, it's again, for a certain kind of player, I think, having that aspirational content paints a picture of a world where there's room to grow into it. And it's whenever you engage with a game that's MMO size, whether it's Planetside or World of Warcraft or whatever, you're making a bond of trust with the player, because it takes an enormous amount of hours to get the most out of these games. Right?
Yeah. I mean, and you just got to think about, the fact that it is an MMO. Like you are going to come across these same players, repeatedly. So you're probably going to at least know them by like notoriety, or maybe like the reputation is a positive one, or maybe like you squad up with these people and you want to squad up again. Like those are all good things to have. Like the game should be. Well, actually, I think if anything, that's kind of what defines an MMO. Is you put it perfectly. Like the game is bigger than its mechanics.
Right. Yeah, there's a guy who plays on Emerald who all of y'all probably know, and he reminds me of those of you who play World of Warcraft. You probably know this archetype, the Orc Warlock, who hangs out in Stranglethorn Vale and ganks newbies. You know what I'm talking about? If you don't know, you can probably imagine. Stranglethorn Vale is a unique zone in World of Warcraft where both sides of the game, the enemy factions, really collide for the first time. And if you're playing on a PvP server, you're going to die a lot on your way to killing trolls or getting warthog intestines or whatever you're there to do. And when I started playing Planetside again last year, in the summer of 2019, after the DX11 update, which, by the way, brought me back in. So,
Good.
yeah, it was huge. And I think I gave it enough time so I didn't necessarily have to work through all the kinks with everybody. But
yeah,
I came back in, and I decided, I've been playing on Connery, the whole time because I'm on the West Coast. I'm gonna roll an Emerald and see what the Emerald culture is like. And I ran up against who to me the Stranglethorn Orc ganking Warlock of that server was, which is Zonic.
Oh,
And
really? Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
he hopped factions, and he when I was just getting back into the game and was not any good, I measured myself against him. He was a piece of aspirational content for me. Like I want to kill Zonic. I gotta get him. And in a play session, I might see him like 7 or 8 times. If I could get him once, I was like, yeah. And then the next week, I'm like, I'm gonna get him 25% of the time. And over time, that kind of grows. It's a self-directed goal, or at least
Yeah,
that was
intrinsic motivation. Yeah.
right. And I don't know. I think maybe there's some overlap with that kind of entrepreneurial spirit you described. Um, but I think that Planetside's a great game for people who have that. And the more kinds of tent poles you can put up to give people room to create those things, the better it gets. And bastions, colossi, outfit wars,
Yeah.
all this stuff hits those beats, I think.
So I want to share a fear with you.
Okay.
Uh, so we're working toward this mission system, the campaigns, and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But I feel like, and this is how I felt about directives too. And directives have obviously they've done a lot of good for the game in that they kind of incentivizes people to like keep playing. Anytime we throw a new directive in, like we know that there's a certain amount of players that are just going to pursue it. Doesn't even matter what the reward is.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there's probably a balance somewhere where if the game becomes too focused on progression to the point where it's I don't even know where the definition kind of is, but there's a certain point where where the game probably like feels like progression, and then because of that the intrinsic motivation kind of goes away.
Mm.
The willingness to create those personal goals
Mm-hmm.
kind of gets pushed to the side so that you can get the shiny stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that with our new system we don't hit that. I think that a lot of well, I guess I shouldn't say a lot of games. Like many games have daily challenges and that sort of thing. So one of the kind of the changes to this system, it's a different take on it, with a new mission system, is that I want players to be able to look at the list of randomly generated missions that they get. Or I'm sorry, to be clear, like we don't have the tech for that. It's not randomly generated. It's like there's a list of missions and then it
Randomly
picks out a
selected.
certain randomly selected. It's better.
Got
Yeah,
it.
better put. So we man, randomly generated missions would be
Careful.
great. Yeah. So you'll be able to see down the list and you'll say like, okay, I want to do this, and this is the reward that it offers, and you kind of like have that internal conversation with yourself, and hopefully it's not like I want to slog through the worst possible garbage so that like even though I don't play it, just so that I can get the best rewards. Like that's what I hope we don't get. And hopefully by virtue of this system, we're able to give people options, and then also kind of create the missions in such a way that it creates like conflicts with players. Like there's definitely some experimentation with that, where like something will for like a mining drill will start on a continent or something like that, and then much like local events in like a Destiny or a Guild Wars 2, or Warhammer Age of Reckoning, for anybody who played that. You'll have like kind of this zone, and then people who are participating in that particular mission can go and like fight against one another and that sort of thing. So we want to create different points of contention, as well as create like lower paced gameplay where it's just like, oh well, I suck at killing people, so instead maybe I'll just do this courier mission, and basically give you like session based goals that are kind of interconnected with the world as a whole, so that when you log in, like there's more direction to your session, right. And it gives you something personal to do. I do think that maybe that's going to conflict, at least starting out, with some of the squad play stuff, but we'll see how it goes, and we definitely would want there to be like squad and outfit based missions and that sort of thing. And again, like like hopefully people are fighting like over the world, so like everything doesn't boil down to just like, okay, here's the lattice and this is the base that you're going to be fighting at for the next half hour. Hopefully it's like fighting, you know, around it and like doing other things that kind of, you know, manipulate the battlefield. Yeah, that's the goal at
So the
least.
fear?
The fear is that I hope that we don't tip the scales to where it becomes this gear grind. That's one of the things that I don't like. I've never felt drawn to it personally. Like there's still a lot of stuff that I haven't unlocked, but I just kind of play the game to play the game. Even directives, I don't particularly pursue them, and I don't know if that's more just because of my archetype. Like I'm not a collector or like uh
Do you know your Bartle type?
uh I think I'm more of a killer primarily,
Mm-hmm.
and like kind of a sub, um, maybe achiever, maybe, but like
So Bartle typing,
primarily killer.
for everyone out there, is a system that this guy who worked on multi-user dungeon games, old school text MMORPGs,
I
came
love
up
me some buds.
came up
That's how I
to.
learned how to type. Sorry, I keep interrupting. Go
Oh,
ahead.
there's a story.
Yeah.
That's a good motivation. Yeah.
Hmm.
So the Bartle typing is a way that this guy, Dr. Joseph Bartle, came up with to say, here's what I think draws people to play this game. And here's the kinds of people you can draw in with different ways. And there are two axes. So there's the world and there's players, and there's acting versus interacting. Okay. So if you like acting on players, you're a killer. You like imposing your will on other people. If you like interacting with players, you're a socializer, which is my number one. If you like acting on the world, you're an achiever, which means you really like getting stuff done. You probably love directives. And if you like interacting with the world, then you're an explorer, and you probably are looking heavily into this Esamir anomaly.
Hmm.
So you said you're tilted towards killer. Sounds like you're tilted away from achiever.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely not socializer. Definitely not explore. Actually, you know, maybe a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, primarily killer for sure.
Sure. Yeah, I think for me it was socializer, like socializer and killer, and socializer and achiever, like completely diametrically, like 100% and zero. And then near the middle, I'm about the same on exploring and explorer killer.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I get then you and I both don't necessarily we're not driven by extrinsic goals as much, and I
Hmm.
understand how you would feel, like you said, fearful of putting in too much extrinsic goal pursuit. And Planetside is a sandbox oriented game. I get that. It's a different kind of reward to put in a um, a job for someone to do to get a thing versus to put a bastion in the game and say, here's a new toy. Go make some
Right.
stories with it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's like a toy is honestly a good way to put it because like you are in the sandbox. Like in, you know, if we just give you the tools, like you can kind of, you know, manipulate the world and honestly the like all the players and then that sandbox is kind of what creates all those stories and those experiences and makes the game what it is. So I definitely don't want to get too far away from that. I feel like that's kind of the core of what we have, the core of what makes Planetside special. And to the progression end, um, I feel like a lot of stuff is so accessible. Once you have like this just like minimum amount of time spent in the game,
Mm-hmm.
that the rest of it kind of falls away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because really, once you have the core class abilities progress through,
Hmm.
which don't take a huge investment of time, you're in a pretty good spot to be useful. I think maybe one of the exceptions there is the vehicle game, which
Yep.
requires a bigger initial investment.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know what the right answer is on that. I'm curious what Chad thinks. I recognize that you don't want to, like, the classic, I think, push pulls between sandbox and theme park, right?
Hmm.
Where people who want a theme park game want to go on rides, and that's the complete extrinsic motivation, and there's not as much player agency involved. And people who want to sandbox, people who want to make their own content, basically. Um, but probably there's a compromise there that's best. But I'm really curious about, um, I guess it sounds like what you think is that generally the more player agency type stuff is more interesting to you.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say so. I think that I mean, there's boundaries. I think a lot of kind of what we learned over time, just as a development team, is uh, is that the path of least resistance will always be taken, and to the game's detriment. Like
Mm-hmm.
the players really don't like this thing, but they keep doing it over and over and over. It
If given the
just
chance,
won't stop.
players will optimize the fun out of a game. That's the
Exactly.
saying. I
Yeah,
can't remember
yeah.
who said it, but
Uh, yeah, and a lot of times you just got to save them from themselves.
yeah. And you have
It's
to
a
be
really
careful.
interesting paradigm.
Hmm. I mean, I've heard complaints from some people about having to hop into a max suit to practically get the summer directive done that's going on in the live
Yeah,
game right
it's
now.
like you don't need to do it actually, the directive.
Yeah.
But people don't think that way, right? They're like, oh, this is limited time, and that's like we are putting this in the game, and making it limited time so that you play the game, right? Um, Hopefully there's enough options there where you like don't necessarily have to do the one that you don't like, but um I think there's that. So like, I got to do it because it's telling me that I have to do it, or it's like I really want to do it and I want to do it quickly.
Hmm.
uh and then some things, like when you look at the directives, they weren't originally intended to be just like ground out. Like it was like, oh, you do this and then over the course of a year you're going to get this fun thing at the end.
Hmm.
Well, people don't think that way though.
Yeah.
They it's like an instant gratification thing, or it's just, and then they'll complain this directive takes too long to do. It's like, well, that's not the point.
Mm. Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah.
With any kind of game, it's impossible to meet the demands of the most active players, right?
Hmm.
Um, there are a lot of slayers that I have played with and associated with, and you see people talking about araxiuming. Oh my god, that's hard to say. A weapon in like one day, and there's like,
Yeah.
okay, this come this day, this come the next day, and it's like, oh my god, like,
Yeah.
there are people who can really kill fast, but even if you're killing fast, that's a big job. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. No, and
how do
what's
you?
kind of interesting is that it comes at the detriment of all the other players too, because you're looking for the most like optimal way to grind these kills out, and you're just like inflicting the most insufferable experience on the people who are on the receiving end of it. And a lot of times, just because of how the game plays out, uh,
Mm-hmm.
like they don't know any better to like leave, or like how to counter you, or just like how to take matters into their own hands. And yeah, we create a lot of opportunities where we let players kind of ruin the fun of other players, and that is not an easy problem to solve.
How do you approach it?
Um, One goal at a time, I guess. Like combined arms was like an attempt at that, and obviously that didn't turn out the way that we had envisioned it to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like it's poking and kind of yeah, like we're within a box right now, and you need to kind of like figure out the boundaries of it and kind of like see how much flex it has. And sometimes you put something in and then see if players can eventually like acclimate to it,
Mm-hmm.
because that it'll be better in the long run, even if they're complaining about it in the short term. And then sometimes you think you're doing that and it's not quite there. But I think one thing to keep in mind is just that like this is kind of uncharted territory as far as a game like this goes. Like there's been
Yeah.
other massively multiplayer
Yeah. Who do you learn
FPS, but
from? Are there any games out there that
I
you can take cues from?
it's yeah, I mean, a lot of the lessons come from things that aren't necessarily like in our domain. So like
Mm-hmm.
uh just watching Destiny 2's history and kind of playing through it, it's interesting to see like the stuff that they put in the game and kind of like tried, and then them have to like reel it back and integrate it in a different way.
Mhm.
and just a lot of the changes that they've made. Like they're kind of I don't want to say parallel, but they're figuring out all of the problems that we currently have, just because they're trying to make their like game as a service, right? So that put out seasonal or seasons rather,
Mhm.
um, and they bring in like different events to like change up the gameplay, and like they've revamped like the armor system to increase longevity, and like also make use of all of the resources that they had in the game that you kind of just like didn't need after a while. So they've done just like a lot of changes to mold the game, and there's some stuff that's just like fell flat, and they had to learn from it and like figure it out and kind of like reincorporate it in a different way. So just viewing the lessons of a game like that is really interesting to me, because I think that a lot of games now are, if they're not going through these issues currently, like they will be, because I think that games as a service is probably going to outlast just like kind of well, I shouldn't say that. There will always be a place for both, but I think that games as a service will become more popular. I mean, it's already become more
There's a high
popular.
demand for it. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's also easier. Like once you create when you gain a following, it's easier to retain that following than it is to make a new title and kind of roll the dice. You've seen we've seen games that are good, like by traditional standards, that just like, they have a spike, people have an interest, and then it just dies
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah.
Or isn't given like enough of a shot to succeed. Like Lawbreakers is a good example that,
Mhm.
conceptually, like very smart, art wise, very well done. Like there's a whole lot going on for that game, and the people behind it very experienced.
Mhm.
Uh, but eventually just died, like, and died very quickly too.
Yes.
And it's like if a game like that doesn't stand a chance in this industry, like there's to me it represents like a shift of a way of doing things that we're still trying to like figure out. Like there's a
Mhm.
reason that Destiny isn't going for a Destiny 3 right now.
Mhm.
At least to my knowledge, they're like making Destiny 2 better. um
Why is that, do you think?
I just because of the reason that I mentioned, but just like it's hard to create a new game. But then, I mean, like, I guess, like, if anything, Destiny would probably have a decent calling for it. But like, even Destiny 2, people, said, why didn't you create Destiny 1 and like build all these features in Destiny
Yeah.
2? Because Destiny 2 is very similar
Yeah.
in a
It was
lot
a
of
very
ways to
rough
Destiny 1.
transition for the Destiny
Yeah,
community.
yeah. And I feel like if, well, not that I want to get into a Planetside 3 conversation here, but I feel like there would be some similar challenges, right?
Mhm.
Where you can kind of, I think everybody's going to chomp into the bit for a Planetside 3, but I
Mhm.
think the reason for it is because this game is so broken that there's a lot that you could change, like on the ground floor. Uh, but then you'll have the other audience, and it's just like, you could just make the game better, and that's what we're continuing to do is make the
Mhm.
game better. Not that there will never be a new project, but now certainly wouldn't be the time for it.
Do you
Planetside
think
2 is
that
not in development.
Yeah,
Just to be clear.
interesting. Do you think the games as a service can ever generate the kinds of I mean, I guess the one I really agree with what you're saying. And what I'm thinking about is the problem of bring how to convince people who have seen the game before to give it another chance again in the future. Um,
Hmm.
like you mentioned another game that I've played quite a lot of, which is Guild Wars 2, which has this problem um, where a lot of people played the game back in 2012, 2013, and they formed an opinion about it. And that opinion's basically immutable. They're still out there. They're still looking for MMO games to play. Um, but they have, despite anything that game has done, and it's not perfect to be clear, to be honest, but um, I think it struggles to convince people to be like, hey, we have iterated a lot. We are basically a different game than we were 5 years ago. Maybe this is it could be that this is just like a God, I can't think of the right word for it. Maybe this is something that we as a gaming community need to learn that and we will learn that, eventually you just check in on games every 5 years.
Hmm.
Because there are a lot of these games as a service games that are keep going. The oldest example I could think of, the oldest, most popular example being World of Warcraft itself, um, which is changed tremendously. it's changed so much that they put out the old thing that is nothing at all looking like the current game, and there's a
Right.
big audience for both. Um, yeah, I guess I'm just musing, but I really recognize the phenomenon you're describing of games as a service being something that people are really it's a growing pains time for the world of gaming. It feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think so too. In regards to your question though, like how do you get those people to take a second look? Like it's kind of uh, what the impetus behind Escalation was.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, well, we know that we've had however many incredible amount of players play this game at some point, and they all left for some reason. So we decided to target very heavily, outfit leaders and just like kind of the old G Planetside players uh, who are kind of interested in just kind of the sort of the craziness that makes the game. And really what it does for us is just it gives us a flagship, so to speak, to bring those players back, right? And then a lot of marketing was thrown behind it, and a lot of there's hype, leading up to it, and that's all good. But you only get so many of those,
Yeah.
and only so often. So we need to definitely see, you know, what like kind of optimize our efforts with bringing people back. Like whenever we do marketing, like we know that we'll always bring people into the game, but then like retaining them, it's a problem as we've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then as far as the win backs for the players who've lapsed, uh, yeah, I mean it's been a good almost 8 years now since the game launched.
Yeah.
So who knows when we'll be able to get one of those again. So every update is about not only bringing people back but keeping them. And I think it's probably about the best you can do until you find those really like good pivotal moments to put something crazy um,
Mm-hmm.
into the world and kind of bring them back.
Yeah. And as far as that problem goes of attracting people back, I don't know. I don't know if Planetside could have done any better than how you guys did with Escalation, with that suite of things that you introduced all at once and all coming through, honestly, pretty cleanly. Um,
In the scheme of things, yeah.
I mean, we've seen some really hairy stuff. You talked about the X11
Yeah,
compared to that.
yeah.
How was this just the way it came through so cleanly? Was this just an indication of how experienced this team is?
I think yeah, no, in no small part. Um, and then a lot of honestly, like we have more QA resources, and we gave it the appropriate amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like we pushed it back, I think twice, at least. And the community was behind it. They're like, "Wow, you guys are doing something really cool right now. Just take the time,
Yeah.
fix it. You know, and that's important. A lot of times you don't have the luxury of time, to work on an update like that. But we figured that if it's not good, then we're just like shoving more crap into the world. So and it's not going to do like what we want it to, right? We have a
Mm-hmm.
specific goal that we want to hit with that update. So in order to do that, we have to take our time.
Yeah. And whenever an update like this hits a game, there's a ton of things you have to navigate. Um, Deadlines you have to push against, pressure from
Mhm.
different stakeholders to have it come in a certain way at a certain time to line up with certain other things. It's complicated. I get that. Um, One aspect of the update still has me wondering, though, and I don't know how much you can tell me about this, but like I look back at some of the other big updates in PlanetSide's history, and looking at this one, there's one enormous difference that I can see, and maybe I missed it, but I don't think any of this is monetized.
Yeah, yeah. No, so we figured that there's definitely a lot of talk about monetization. You have to have that discussion, with every update because you don't want to like leave money on the table,
Yeah.
right? Is the I really don't like that expression for some reason,
Well,
but
you gotta support the game and give it a chance to grow where it can. As if you're gonna make
yeah.
something great, absolutely.
So with our target though, we were planning to bring back enough old members to where like a lot of the stuff that we had done for the past however many years is going to be new to them, and so they'd
Mm,
have plenty to invest in and that sort of thing. There was a conversation about monetizing the war asset system, and
mhm,
that's where actually the overclock button is kind of
mm,
plays in. So like you would like we were talking about there being like resource boosts that you'd get, and it just like it didn't make sense, and it also wouldn't feel good. Like it was kind of contrary to the gameplay that we wanted to create and everything else. Unfortunately, like we have a team that is rational, and we weren't under any crazy pressure, um, as had been in the past in various times. Um, where we had to make a decision like that. So it was just better for us to not deal with it. Like we did merit boosts,
mhm.
right? So if
Yep.
people want to create the stuff, but like the merit stuff it's not like super I don't know, it's just like another, portion of progression and
Yeah, it's just
uh
a fast forward button, and it's not for even
yeah.
arguably the most important parts. I mean,
Right. Like
you can
it's
hit
all
the goals
personal
without it.
progression.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I also noticed that I think there were a few bundles that went back into the store at the
Oh
same
yeah.
time Escalation came out, which
Yeah,
is
for sure.
totally makes
And that
sense.
stuff. Yeah, it makes sense to package that stuff whenever we can. Like, I mean, you're bringing a bunch of people back, you want them to have something to buy, but then also for the current members who maybe haven't left the game, they enjoy buying new stuff too. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, I bought in. Actually, I said this before,
well,
but
thank you.
yeah, absolutely. I like supporting the games that I like. Like, I actually take pleasure in it, and not everyone's in the same position I am. I work a 9 to 5 and I play when I'm not. So,
Mm,
I'm able to support a game. I'm able to drop money on a bundle. Not only does it not only does it enhance my enjoyment of the game because I'm it's literally more stuff, more goodies, faster progression, all that stuff that's obvious on the surface. But to me, it just feels good to support the game. And
yeah,
I'll even like stay subscribed at times when I'm not playing actively for that reason. Um, it kind of makes me think of actually the model of something like Twitch, where
yeah,
the
yeah.
content is there for you. And when you jump in and say, I want to buy a subscription or uh, I want to put money in, you're not doing it because you necessarily because you're getting something back, but because you want to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting time that we live in, where like honestly, so long as you have uh, quantity and then people who are interested in what you're doing, like the amount of money, like you're not trying to maximize profits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of contrary to the point of running your channel or whatever else. It's like if you believe in what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
um then feel free to donate, and
Yeah.
hopefully you have a large enough and dedicated enough following to where that sustains you. And that's to me it feels really clean. Regarding the Twitch stuff, I just don't like advertisements, so I pay for it.
Oh yeah. Amen, brother.
And YouTube too.
Ads kill me.
But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I got into a place, I was in college in the early 2000s, and I basically stopped watching TV. I didn't have a TV for many, many years. This is before streaming services were a thing, but whenever I wanted to watch something, I just torrent it.
Hmm.
Unashamed pirate. Not so much anymore because it's so easy to not pirate. But now whenever I'm forced to watch an ad, I always feel so violated. So
Yeah, no, I feel like I have to take a shower after watching an ad. That's weird.
have you have you been following this new story about um, EA introducing advertisements during the as a test during some of their sports games that are coming out?
Oh, really? No, no, I
Can you
haven't.
believe
Sounds
that?
like a very EA thing to do.
Oh man, it's such a punchline. Um, But yeah, apparently they ran some kind of a pilot program. I don't know all the details. Maybe someone in chat does. But basically, for a UFC game, they would run advertisements when people were playing their game to see if people tolerated it, and apparently they did.
We just, I don't know. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it
Like,
ain't me.
I hate advertisements, but I also like playing the game. It's like it's hard to take a stand sometimes, like because
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like you're necessarily getting hurt, either when you rebel against something that you don't like. So like loot boxes and microtransactions is a good example.
Mm.
It only got to like a point where we were able to talk about it uh, because the Battlefield controversy or Battlefield uh,
Star
Battlefront,
Wars.
Star Wars Battlefront.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that controversy, right? And that controversy wouldn't have been a thing because this happens all the time. Like what EA did was not necessarily worse than what a lot of other people have done,
Mm-hmm.
but because they have this really recognizable IP, because they have this massive, massive following, there are like enough voices to where like it can really
Mm-hmm.
kind of like tip the scales and start this conversation.
Yeah. Also,
That
really
that that,
publicly
that tipping
bungled the
point.
response too.
Yeah. I mean, that never helps. but
Yeah.
yeah. So like, and if they're just running, like a little test group or whatever, yeah, I don't know how small it could be, thousands of participants, so far as I know.
Hey,
But like, I could totally see it. People like kind of like suffering through it, and then management's like, well, they didn't leave, so this must be a thing that's okay.
yeah, it seems like the effects of those aren't immediate. Um, yeah, actually, effect in the chat just brought up a really relevant anecdote. Back in the day, Planetside 1, in the sanctuaries for that game, there was a time where there were actually TV ads playing in the sanctuary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know there was at least a Fanta ad.
Right. I
Fanta.
remember that.
Uh, yeah. I wonder what else there was. Maybe McDonald's. Maybe. I don't know.
Good times. Good times for the few of us
Yeah.
who remember those days. Um, okay. Well, man, Rel, we've been down a lot of ground here. Um, there's more stuff on my list, but I think we probably go for 3 more hours.
Well, what you got left?
Okay. Well, I got another
Have we completed
controversy.
my story? Uh,
Well, okay. So,
Hopefully.
okay, yeah. Let's talk about that. So, um, the story is you're the lead game designer now of this amazing new studio, birthed from the old one, Rogue Planet Games,
Hmm.
and you've just released Escalation, a critically well received expansion that I think has succeeded in bringing back a lot of players. I've been watching Steam charts. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but I looked at some of the old trends, and I see things like construction and other things like that, where the player base is the same 2 months after that it was 2 months before.
Right.
I'm not seeing that now. It seems like we are seeing a semi-permanent increase in players. Is that accurate?
Yeah, definitely a bit better. I honestly don't know what the numbers are off the top of my head,
Mm-hmm.
but and a lot of people are kind of chalking some of that stuff up to COVID too. And honestly, I think
Yeah.
it certainly doesn't hurt us. But I I think that using COVID as a cop out is kind of uh, it's an excuse that kind of demeans the efforts of the update. But
Hmm.
the I think that there's probably like enough in game and based on the um, targets that we were going for, where we brought back like enough of the right people who are more interested in sticking around for a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then like also it's just we need to constantly be doing really interesting things moving forward. Personally, I measure success based on like motivation based on momentum.
Mm-hmm.
So provided we can like maintain this momentum, then hopefully we'll get to a good spot where we can start to increase populations over time. That's my wild dream. Um,
It seems to be a big through line for you.
it really is, yeah, because it's something. And yeah, I mean, not to go back, but like that's where a lot of the frustration um, came from like on the smaller team is just like I really wanted to fix the game, but just wasn't enough, time or hands, to do that.
Hmm.
Um, so like maybe there's an opportunity now, but realistically, like when it comes down to it, like very rarely do games reverse course.
Hmm.
So, uh, but the only thing that we can do is kind of like keep on keeping on, because like we have something special here. Obviously, there's a desire for it. We are like pioneering this genre, so there's a lot of exploring left to do, and um, like all these lessons will like undoubtedly be able to translate into future projects as well. So yeah, so I mean it's all good. Just, yeah.
Exploring a brave new world of Planetside MMO
Right.
FPS.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that is obvious to me is how successful you guys have been. And when I say you guys, I mean your RPG
Mm.
in keeping people looking to the next update, in never letting people kind of get into a cycle where a big push was made to get something into the game, and then it's just like balance updates for months, right?
Yeah, I feel like we're pretty good about doing that on the old team too. Like balancing between holidays and just like
Okay.
kind of what was going on. So I feel like honestly I feel like it kind of remains to be seen. I don't want to like shoot
Count
myself
your
in the foot,
chickens. Mm.
but yeah, like because the tactical loadout update that we did, honestly it was just it's kind of like an interim thing, and I think that's probably way less polished than it probably should have been. But and then this campaigns update, which is like kind of the big one that we're moving into, is it's taking a little bit longer than anticipated, and just we had to put out a summer thing. I say had to, but like the community wanted it, so
People love
so
events.
yeah, so it made sense to do it.
Yeah.
I Yeah, so got that going kind of just like as an interim update as well. But realistically, like we had kind of wanted our missions and campaigns update to be out already.
Hmm.
I think that was the original plan, but
Okay.
we're still working with it, and there's still
Hmm.
honestly a lot of work left to do.
Hmm.
So so hopefully it's big enough to warrant kind of uh the I don't know, the follow through. Well, I guess we did the Colossus update too,
Yeah.
but meh,
Big tank. Yeah.
whatever.
New toy.
Yeah, no, and that was just another interim thing.
Hmm.
And I think we'll be hitting like these different kind of scale updates. It doesn't make sense for us to do like an escalation size thing, repeatedly, or like even ever, maybe. Who
Hmm.
knows? But certainly like we want to vary the scale of these updates and kind of like be working on something bigger while we push out these little bite-sized
Yeah.
updates to kind of keep people satiated.
How often? How often would you like to bring new things into the game?
I think once a month.
Okay.
That would be my preferred cadence, but it also has to be done with. So you almost want two different teams to work on it, and for that we certainly don't have enough hands. Like even still,
Hmm.
like you have a team that is working on the live game and is focused on that end of things, and then you have a team who's kind of like working in the background on some of the longer pull projects. That'd be the ideal. Totally can't work out that way. Yeah, just given the team size. But
Hmm. Yeah, I've seen other live services games where they like rotate multiple teams and they have things come out. Like I think Guild Wars 2 for a while had 3 different teams working on what they were calling their living world model, or they would
mm,
put out a new major story release with new dungeons and stuff every 2 or 3 months, and that would be the product of like 6 to 9 months of work from one team because they had 3 teams going and they could release these things every 3 months. That's the kind of thing you're.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm referring to.
Hmm.
Something along those lines.
That would be cool. I'll tell you
Yeah,
what,
I know, right?
right? I mean, if Planetside was got to a spot where you were introducing, say, Colossus size updates once a month, I don't mean colossal updates. I mean like
Right.
iterating on the sandbox to that level.
Yeah.
Be very cool. And yeah, I think one of the things I'm really interested in that I think I see happening, and we kind of alluded to this a little bit back, is the gameplay loop. Two things you mentioned to me that one is the idea of having Sanctuary be kind of a pacing mechanism in a gameplay loop,
Hmm.
which I really like. The idea of having a town with town services for a very MMO thing that works to staple. And you also mentioned the idea of events happening that were tied to the mission system. You mentioned a drill or some kind of a drill event or something like
Hmm.
that. Um, when Commander Sirius and I were talking a couple weeks back, one of the things we just kind of dreamed about was what it would be like to have Sanctuary be a really effective social hub, and like maybe you even go to Sanctuary to pick up your missions. You go out with your platoon, your group, your squad, whatever. You go get something done. It's easy, it's hard, whatever. And then you come back. And maybe that's not exactly what it looks like, but having like this kind of place where you like an inn where you come back to and you just talk or you can socialize a little bit. And that might not attract everyone who plays Planetside, but it might pull at the strings of people who might otherwise not want to stick around. Is that the kind of thing that you would hope to have more of in the future, or am I just off in La La Land?
No, no, for that that specific example there. So we have we'll reveal more about this later. And I can't remember to the extent of which we talked about it on the last stream, but so like a campaign is going to have different chapters, and these chapter missions are it's a very like you go out, you do a thing, and then you come back, and then back to Sanctuary, and then it progresses like the story and whatever else.
Story,
Um,
yeah, baby. I love
yeah,
Araxis
okay.
lore.
So if just to tamper expectations here, like if we don't hit it the first time around, like things will get better over time.
Okay, okay.
I think campaigns in general are a good excuse for us to like shake up the environment, and definitely do the storytelling. Obviously, kind of infuse more lore into the game.
Shake up
But
the environment. That excites some people.
yeah, those
Mm-hmm.
words were very specific. Uh, but the yeah, so but at the same time, the missions are going to be more like free form. Like you go into the UI, you just pick all the missions, and then you go and you participate in them. Kind of similar to directives in a way. And I think that creating the balance there between like we don't necessarily want to force people to go to Sanctuary because they haven't really been accustomed to that play style, um, for the past 8 years. And because of the pace of the game, it's a little bit contrary to what we um, want that flow to be. But at the
Almost
same time,
continent
for camp,
queuing too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a really good point. Um, and for campaigns and in particular, though, it's more finite the things that you're doing. So to us, it makes sense to bring you back and kind of do that storytelling in the social space for it. So definitely a balance, I think, with everything, as we kind of explore the boundaries here.
Word.
Word.
Okay. How important is it for you to bring people to Sanctuary?
Um, I I think it should always be optional, or I shouldn't say always be optional, because we obviously want you to do some things there. But I think in kind of a drop-in casual shooter experience, I don't think it should be necessary.
Hmm.
I do think that it should be an experience that you want to participate in, but at the same time, may not appeal to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, just trying to keep those two spheres in mind is important. But we definitely want it to be part of the cycle as far as like what you um, like again the starting in Sanctuary and the ending in Sanctuary. I think that those are good like entry and exit points too. Like you're not dropping in the middle of a warp gate. There's an alert going on. You're like you also have to like feel like you should be doing something, or the opposite end of the spectrum, like taking away from like a slot where if you're just like screwing around, somebody else
Yeah.
could be there for
Idling in
a
the warp gate
purpose.
when the continent's full. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So like stuff like that. Yeah, we'll have to see. Like there definitely needs to be more to Sanctuary. Even after this next update, I think
Mm-hmm.
that there still needs to be more to
Mm-hmm.
Sanctuary. I have a personal goal that nobody knows about yet. I totally
Ooh.
want a dating simulator for February next year.
for
Totally
the
will not happen. I
Valentine's
mean, it
event.
might, and who knows? What's that?
Yes, a dating
Yeah,
simulator,
yeah, yeah. It's like
like
for Valentine's Day, but we just make it a permanent thing. Maybe I don't know.
my
Maybe
mind
it's
is going wild with possibilities.
could be more like you play Hades at all?
I'm familiar with it.
Okay, super great game. If you even remotely enjoy roguelites or
Mhm.
roguelikes, yeah, definitely give it a shot. Perfect storytelling and the gameplay, outstanding. Super giant games, all this stuff is good.
Yeah.
Um, but you basically the progression in that game revolves around having interactions with different people, and you're like giving them gifts, and it's like progressing like they're for some people it's like a love interest thing, and for some people it's more like a respect thing, and you're
Uh
creating
huh.
like bonds with people. So like as an easy way, like you could go that direction, or you could make it an idle click simulator. For anybody who plays Crush Crush, yeah, if you don't know what that is, neither do I.
I like the
uh,
idea of gifts. I think that's got potential.
yeah,
I mean, maybe there's a maybe it's even a currency of some kind, like a hearts currency, and you can just
yeah,
choose who to bring your hearts back to
for
at
sure.
the end of a continent alert.
Could bring back some of that Spitty Bay fanfic. Um, yeah, kind of give that some canonical lore. Yeah,
I think that's got legs, man.
I I think so too. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, and look, I was gonna before you brought that amazing anecdote up, the idea up, I was gonna say that like, I really hear what you're saying about not screwing too much with the drop in, kill some
Mhm.
stuff, drop out thing with Planetside. Um, but speaking personally, and I'm not sure how many people I speak for, I like a little bit of friction. I don't mind waiting to get into the thing if the thing itself is bigger. And and again, it's that MMO kind of interest that maybe not everyone in Planetside is into, and respect that. Um, but
Yeah.
I love the idea of more stuff being in Sanctuary. I wouldn't even mind if there was more stuff that was gated by Sanctuary. Like, what if you couldn't interact with directives unless you were in Sanctuary? I know it'd be a pain in the ass, but it's kind of an out there idea, like example of. Um, it wouldn't bother me at all if I had to go to an NPC or a console in Sanctuary to interact with the mission system. And maybe you only work on one mission at a time when you're on a continent. I don't know. That probably has cheesing potential. Point is, you're the developer. I tell you what I like, and you figure out how to do it, right?
Right.
But
That's
I'm I'm
exactly it.
I'm just saying, like, I think Sanctuary is something that can be built out in a way that creates a part of Planetside that to me has never really been as real as I wanted it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And definitely like that those conversations come up, like especially when like should you buy all your weapons at a vendor? It would certainly declutter the UI, which we have a constant, present concern about.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but at the same time, it's like people tend to buy their weapons from the UI, not from the depot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just because like the convenience is there, and for people who are like who already are knowledgeable of the game, like it's not an overwhelming amount of information, but there's potentially benefits. Like if we did move it off somewhere else, where people like for example, like maybe new players aren't like they don't have to worry about focusing on spending their certs on a weapon. Like if it's kind of not gated necessarily, but
Mm-hmm.
if there is more friction, there's a lot of considerations like that where I think we just need to be smart about like which routes we decide to go down, and
Right.
then also be content to like just take it a step back if it seems like it's not within the best interest of the game as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but this is like moving more toward like an MMO direction is the direction that we're going right now. So there's a lot of potential for change, to that end.
Mm-hmm. I like the sound of that. And hearing you talk about uh, kind of testing ideas with the game, like turning off the tutorial during escalation,
Hmm.
it seems clear that there would be opportunity to test out some of these ideas of will people go to Sanctuary for this thing if they kind of have to, or will they just ignore it altogether and you can pick and choose
Yeah.
where to apply the friction, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cool. Okay. Well, I probably am about done with fanboying out over Sanctuary. Send your fanfics of your Vanu fanfics straight to me. Um, you can contact one of my Twitch mods if you don't know how to get a hold of me. And yeah, I love that stuff. Um, and but let's maybe lift it back a little bit. Planetside's a big game, lots of things to talk about. Let's lift it back a little bit, though. I feel like we're mostly caught up with the story of Wrel. You're here in the lead game designer's shoes. I guess if there's anything else to go to explore, and you can suggest something, of course, but it would be what's next. We talked a bit about which way the Planetside is going, but do you want to talk at all about where you see your career going or what your ambitions are? You did talk about how you wanted to actually, make a game at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really want to talk about myself forever, but yeah, I mean,
Your name's on the
making a game is
interview, so you think you can get away with it.
yeah. I think one of my goals, my dream, my real only dream, honestly, is to make a game. So, whether that is um, whether it's Planetside 3, which I think every designer on the team has a design document for Planetside 3.
I think you're right.
So it's just like a thing that's like of course we want to work on a new game. Like who wouldn't want to work on a new game?
One of the
Um,
questions I've written down here is, what's the first word that comes to your mind when I say Planetside 3?
Meh.
Oh.
See, and the thing is that, and there's so to kind of bring that around. The thing is that there's a lot that we could do, and I certainly have design documents for a Planetside 3, and all the other designers have their visions of what a Planetside 3 could mean. I think that if we were to do like, I feel like it could even be a new IP. Like that's kind of the direction that I would like to see. But at the same time, you risk ticking off the Planetside 2 community that like would want a Planetside 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly want a Planetside 3. I would like to erase all the mistakes of the past and kind of like start fresh, obviously. But I feel like it would be really cool to work on something that wasn't that too.
Is that like just a creative interest thing? I mean, I think it's important people who are creative to work on different things and to iterate over time. You look at like I know, like when I was younger, I had my favorite bands, right? And they put out an album that I loved. And I'd always get frustrated when they put out another album and they're like, "Oh, well, we're changing creatively." And they didn't just make another version of the thing that I really loved. That always
Right.
annoyed me. Over the years, I eventually realized, oh, well, that's what people do.
Mm-hmm.
Creators especially. Is that kind of the instinct that you're describing?
No, I mean it's I don't want to even call it an instinct. Like I have like journals of game ideas and everything, and like I could choose one from a hat and say oh, this would be fun to make. But at the same time, like Planetside 3 is fine. Like it's established IP. Like I have no qualms to make it, and in fact, I certainly would love to make Planetside 3. I've pushed my game design documents in front of many a studio goer. But what I would really like to see is something to like kind of in the same sphere, but would be more extreme, especially when it comes to the asymmetry. I would really love, not that I'm pitching myself at Bioware, but I would really love to make like a Planetside 3 or Planetside 2 style game, but like in the Mass Effect universe. I think that'd be like so interesting. Or even like a universe of StarCraft. They might be working on it now. I hope they are. But yeah, like that sort of game.
StarCraft being 3 factions, tons of asymmetries. Like there's an obvious connection there.
It excites me so much that even like something like that could even exist. And that's what gets me going, is just like what can you do this like really like that defies expectations, that is this ambitious and grand and awesome. Because like the formulaic nonsense. I mean, I'm sure Assassin's Creed games are good, but like, I don't want to make another one of those. Or just like,
I'm making
any
sure the
any
people
game
working
like
on Assassin's Creed want to make another one of them.
I'm sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, it's yeah. I just really like being able to let my mind run and do just like really creative stuff. So like yeah, it could be anything. Like I'm not opposed to anything.
Hmm.
But I only say meh to Planetside 3 because there's a lot of potential for anything. Like the sky's the limit,
Hmm.
especially
Why
like
stop
we
at
have
Planetside
technology
3?
that right, yeah, yeah. Like we have technology that people aren't replicating right now, right?
Hmm.
Like we have a game that is able to support the stuff and like, Fortnite is getting up there, but it's not, insane. Call of Duty's getting up there, but it's not insane.
Hmm.
And we just have this amazing um as much as people complain about the engine, like we're still doing something that
What
nobody
it
else
does
is
is
doing, right?
insane. It is
Yeah.
so far above what any other game is trying to do.
Yeah.
The fact that, I mean, one of the easiest things to complain about in Planetside is client side interactions. Um, and there are some games that make them cleaner, but those are games that have 12 people in a game.
Yeah.
I-
Yeah.
The fact that you can increase the number of people 100-fold and only lose as much fidelity is actually being lost is a technological feat. And you need to have a little bit of, I think, nuance to understand that. But it's extremely important to keep in perspective when thinking about what PlanetSide 2 has achieved, I think. Um,
Yeah.
and your comment about other things that are out there, other things to explore, games to try to make. What games are out there right now that are kind of inspiring you, or what are you playing?
Let's see. Jesus, what am I playing? I started playing StarCraft 2 again. I'm awful at it, as I've always been awful at RTS games. But I'm trying to learn a new skill set, and learning to micro is one. Um, let's see. Was waiting on a big Hades update to come out. Played that. Um,
Hmm.
Deep Rock Galactic
Deep Rock.
is
Raise a
is
mug to
just
that.
yeah, right. It's an amazing game. Those guys are killing it. Uh, Planetside 2, obviously.
So
Got
about
back
those.
into oh, go ahead.
No, 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 please.
I got back into Destiny 2, and a lot of that was, like they're doing stuff, and I think that any game that I play is like it's not mind numbing to me. Like it's not just like you sit down and you do it. It's like I I always take away like the lessons,
Hmm.
and that's kind of the way that I've always been. Um, and so the things that engage me are usually the ones that have some deeper interest for me as a designer.
Hmm. So, like a game like, let's say, Destiny.
Hmm.
What kind of deeper interest? I mean, you talked previously about the update cadence and the perils of maintaining a live services in that game. Is that
Hmm.
how you approach Destiny, or are there other things there that grab you?
No, and those are two. Those are some things that stand out. But the kind of the way that I would see Destiny's core loop is kind of similar to what we're going for, right? I
Mhm.
mean, like you have the tower, and you go back there and you get your missions, and you do your yada yada yada, and then you go into the game and complete the stuff, and then you come back. Uh, and that's I think the role that Sanctuary fills, and like getting that to feel good is important. Like there's stuff with just like the spacing of their NPCs and like um, just
Mhm.
the clever stuff that they're doing, where they're like hiding people in certain places so you don't have to load everything. I mean that's just like game design tricks, but yeah, just like a lot of little stuff that I pick up on. But I think that if you were looking at maybe like a Planetside 3, for example, I think that one of the games that you'd probably draw the most parallels to is a game like Destiny 2.
Mhm.
I mean, different, completely different uh, visuals, obviously, and like it wouldn't be like super instance and that sort
Yeah.
of thing. You'd still
And
want to
tons of
retain that sort of.
PVE, which is untrod ground for Planetside.
Yeah, I mean, PVE is it's kind of something that I think you'd want in even like in Planetside 2 in small doses, mostly for like tutorials and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And just like little side missions and stuff for storytelling. But even for a Planetside 3, I think it'd be probably primarily PvP centric. Because the thing about so what's I think what's interesting about a game like this is that if you had PvE, people would probably only play the PvE.
Hmm.
Uh, that's at least my
Efficiency.
opinion on it. Uh, it's a, same thing with like a instance combat. Like if you were to add smaller scale instance and the or instances where people can kind of like go off and do their stuff in a more controlled space, I bet you anything that people would gravitate towards that to the point where it kills the sandbox and
Mm-hmm.
then kind of marginalizes what Planetside 2 was really about in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is more like the protecting players from themselves sort of thing. Because quite frankly, like a more session based Planetside 2 with more balanced elements, even sort of like a battlefield match based game, like it honestly it'd probably be more fun
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. I don't want to say more fun's probably not the right thing, but I think it'd be more fun to more players.
Be more accessible.
Certainly. Yeah. Well, yeah. As far as like a learning curve, I guess.
Yeah, and then you could have things like matchmaking.
Yep. And things like restricted vehicle use and that sort of thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not like you're fighting in your own little sphere on one side of the map, and then hey, maybe a platoon of people drop on this side of the map or whatever.
And then you're
Kind of
fighting
like
a 70-30 battle. Yeah.
right. Yeah,
I
or
mean,
worse.
that to me, that idea of an instance fight at a base is like that is the theme park Planetside.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that the feeling of being able to go anywhere kind of
Mhm.
contributes to uh I mean, that's what creates the sandbox, right?
Yeah.
Is just being able to go anywhere. And even in those small like you're at a base and this is like what you're doing for now, like eventually that disperses. And
Mhm.
then it naturally like redistributes and kind of like moves on to the next point. I think that the organic nature of the sort of point to point combat is another standout feature of the game that it's I think would be hard to replicate.
Mm.
Yeah, in more like instance based stuff.
In a more small scale. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So Destiny, what about these other couple of games you mentioned? How are they? What kind of lessons are you learning from, say, like Deep Rock?
Deep Rock.
Yeah. I want to talk about Deep Rock. I love that game.
Yeah. No, it's I think that even though it's a four-player co-op game, they nail like what roles mean
Hmm.
um to, like more so than any game that I've seen. And they do it in a
Yes.
way that's really interesting because of the all the environment manipulation. Uh and just like it's dark, you need somebody with flares. Everybody has their limited usage, but and like
Hmm.
everybody can also mine too, but like the driller is able to move through, like create shortcuts that are just like way more efficient and
Hmm.
everything else. And at the same time, like each class feels good to play. Like it's not just maybe like in Team Fortress, I guess, like the medic who has to be glued to a heavy.
Right.
At least you could tell me if I'm wrong. I'm just kind of totally making that assumption
No,
based
you're right.
on
For
what I've seen.
TF2, yeah, I mean, it is a more passive role. Or think about like a healer in Overwatch or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
There aren't any passive roles in Deep Rock.
yeah. No, I mean, and that's it's one of those things where like even if you like a certain class, like you're content to play other classes because they can all kill stuff and they all have like a really unique interesting gameplay elements. And
Hmm.
then there's the progression. Like I haven't even gotten to the overclocks yet.
Okay.
Um,
There's some fun there.
yeah, yeah, and it's just like they add a bunch of stuff, but it's done in such a way where it's like you choose what you're working on, right, and then you do the missions and then you get the thing. And I think that progression is really interesting from a design perspective because they're not just like saying like, okay, you get to do everything, right? Like it's gated behind certain prestige requirements and that sort of thing for like, the deep dives and that sort of thing. Um, I'm saying that sort of thing a whole lot, but there is a lot of interesting mechanics that they take advantage of uh, that is kind of just like interlaced throughout the game as a whole. Even
Hmm.
the small like social stuff where it's just like, you know,
Yes.
if you're buying a mug of beer, like it buys it for all of your team, which is like that little
Mm-hmm.
just a little tidbit is cool because like of course, you know, somebody's gonna go up and, you know, drink their beer and everything else, and you know, maybe you dance because it exists, or you know, kick
I love the
a
dancing.
thing into the
The
barrel
music
or
too.
into the
It's
fire.
it surprisingly slaps.
They they got a lot going on, and it's like very small confined space. And like when you look at sanctuary, just like social spaces in general, you have to look at those sorts of things and say like okay, how do you make these interactions feel natural?
Like
You know
that.
how
Hmm.
yeah yeah, there's just a whole lot of good going on.
Hmm. Yeah. So for those out of the loop, Deep Rock Galactic is a 4-player co-op um, shooter where you play as a dwarf, and your job is to mine minerals for an oppressive corporation. Your home base is a space rig. It's a space station in space, and it is um, half alienating and half completely charming. Before you go on a mission, you take your mission consumable, which is a beer that has a funny effect on you, and you dance and you scream "rock and stone" at each other, which is the one emote in the game that somehow confers so much meaning. Uh,
Yeah. Oh man, the Discord, like people, it's like it's a motto, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and someone in chat is asking where the space station in Deep Rock is. It's orbiting over Hox's 4, which is the planet you mine. And you play as one of 4 dwarves, and they're oozing with personality, like
Hmm.
kind of hero style. But at the same time, like there's not a ton of focus on like there's no backstory, there's no like explicit lore. It's kind of just like here's a situation, we're gonna make you believe it's real, and we're gonna give you some fun stuff to do. And you called out the class balance. So the classes in Deep Rock basically it revolve around 2 things. One is killing bugs, which stop you from mining things, and the other one is mobility, which is the ability to navigate around these randomly generated, completely destructible environments. And the way those 4 classes achieve that is really just really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a linkage between the space rig and sanctuary, an obvious comparison to make. How do you make people want to be in sanctuary the same way people want to slap the leprechaun at the bar in Deep Rock?
Is that a thing? This is a
Oh yeah,
leprechaun now?
oh
Oh yeah.
yeah. I think it's relatively new. I might be wrong, but next to the beers, if you haven't tried it, man, you're missing out.
Yeah, I'll have to try it.
Um, and of course the progression. Although Deep Rock, not even despite the fact that it has overclocks, there's only like 100 of them. It's not a game that's designed to be played forever, or at least as long as Planetside.
Yeah, yeah, I was kind of curious about that, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. Do you ever get exhausted about comparing games to Planetside?
I think that due to the nature of Planetside 2, there's a lot of ways to create, you know, comparisons.
Yeah.
What I do get tired of is people calling it Halo.
What?
Exactly. That's what I say to anybody who doesn't know how to play, or like who doesn't play games. Like
Oh
they're a gamer, but
no.
they're not really. It's like, oh, it's like Halo. No,
Oh, he's playing
no,
his
not
Halo
like
again.
Halo. But yeah,
I had no idea.
but it's in space. Oh, you have guns?
It's got trucks.
Right. Must be
Uh,
Halo.
Master Chief himself reporting in. So,
Yeah.
okay. Um, I thought it was really. It's really. I'm really glad you mentioned one other thing too about how when you're playing these games, you're not just doing them to numb yourself. I can't remember the exact phrase you used. But you're playing them and you're looking for things and you're pulling things out of them and you're exploring
Mhm.
different things that interest you about them and you're taking that back, and I think implicitly you're applying them to Planetside and your own work and interests. Um, I think it's really a really good thing to talk about. There's another kind of major gaming controversy going on right now. The world's most popular podcaster, Joe Rogan, is getting there's a ton of air going on right now because he made some comments about the value of playing video games and how
Yeah.
compared to practicing jujitsu, you might as well just be you're just wasting your time. And did you see that?
No, and I've only seen the aftermath, so and because of that I don't want to talk, much about it. And like I don't know, like maybe there's some context there that people are missing or something, or
Yeah,
I don't know. It's
yeah.
just Joe Rogan, but
Well, so I don't
like
know.
it could, yeah.
I can tell you don't want to talk about it. I'll try to put you out of your misery real quick. Uh, so Joe Rogan used to play a lot of Quake 3 back in
Hmm.
the day. He liked it so much, and he had enough money that before broadband was really common, he bought a T1 line to his house. And
Hmm.
he played so much that he didn't get things done in his life, and he had to break himself off the habit. Years later, Quake Champions comes out, which is, an homage and update to Quake 3. And now that he has a warehouse to do whatever he wants in, he builds a LAN center for him and his friends, and they play Quake Champions, and then he can't get his stuff done, and he has to put it away, get rid of it. And so he's formed his opinion about video games based around that experience, more or less. And the
Right,
idea
right.
that there are a
Yeah.
handful of ninjas out there who are successful, and everyone else is Joe Rogan, who can't
Yeah.
break a habit.
Yeah. No, it's totally like that sort of stuff is, yeah. I just like, okay, I had this very personal experience to me, but I can't possibly, like, I don't know, open my mind to like other possibilities that might take the place. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna just project that on everybody because everybody is a lazy gamer. It's really, I think games in general certainly have a risk, of being addictive. It's like growing up, I played a lot of video games. Growing up, I was a very poor student, knowingly so. Like I deliberately skipped out on homework and passed the tests just so that I can kind of skate by in high school, and it wasn't a mystery to me, but I
Mm-hmm.
just really wanted to play video games. Uh, so I think it's about decision making. It's parenting, environment, and to like to that extent, it can be a really good thing. If you have a really crappy upbringing, like video games are an escape. If you uh, just like have social anxiety, like video games are a way to connect with people. Like there's a lot of stuff that's out there that is totally not outside the realms of possibility for anybody who's like remotely even trying to put in the thought.
Mm-hmm.
But I honestly don't know much about Joe Rogan outside of his podcast nowadays, and I certainly don't listen to it. Um, so like this could just be like a normal thing for
Mm-hmm.
him. I guess I wouldn't know.
I just think it's an
Uh,
interesting dynamic because um, I think that video games are like will be the predominant art form
yeah,
everywhere. The
no,
more and
you
more
will
so is
be. Actually, you mentioned this on Sirius's podcast or
uh-huh.
like Sirius's podcast when you had him on. Like, I think
Yeah.
like choosing between a hockey game or like whatever else is on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it'll just be another form of entertainment, and I think that if anything, it's more like it's certainly more interactive. So like there's benefits there than just like
Compared to
slaving
watching a
away
movie,
from
right?
the TV. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like drilling from episode to episode.
Yeah.
So
It's like I don't know. I have my own growing up story too, right? And my parents definitely didn't understand my interest in games. I didn't understand it. Um,
mm,
but we're exploring it, and actually, what ended up happening for me at the start of this year was I got tired of not getting out of games what I put into them, and I
in
said,
what
"Well,
way?
how can I fix that problem? Oh, why don't I make a podcast?"
Mm.
And it's injected every single moment I play a video game with a ton of meaning now because it all feeds back into something that I'm creating, into connections that are being made, into conversations that, to my mind, might not happen if I wasn't doing what I was doing. Um, so I also have a lot of friends, people I play with, who just play games to blow off steam at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The same way you might pop on an episode of The Office or something, and I respect that too. For sure, games have a unique ability to draw people in and distract them from things that might benefit them more to focus on in their own life. But blaming a video game is kind of like, it's like blaming the gun.
Right. Yeah.
And there are certain things we can work on. Like how much RNG do we want? How much do we want to how do we want to interact with people's wallets? What do we want our target audience to be demographic wise, and if they're young, how do we want to accept that the trust that the parent is putting in this experience?
Lots of moral or ethical decisions
right
that go into games.
But I think no matter what happens, we are at the games will never be a smaller deal than they are today.
Yep.
And the Joe Rogans of the world, it would credit them to learn a little bit about it. And I'm not necessarily pinning him down, but he's kind of the flashpoint for what I think is a very interesting discussion. I think even perhaps more interesting, and this goes into really fantasy land, is talking about how the means that we interact with our devices controls the games that can get made. Like, we're just at the start of VR technology, and people were trying to take games that already existed and make them work in VR, and we're just starting to see games that can only really exist in VR. Look at a game like Half-Life Alyx, where Valve is just like, we don't really want to make this outside of VR. It doesn't really make sense. Why would you want to play it that way? And they're just the same way that when Quake came out and people figure out you can mouse look, it's like, well, why you can't have this game in some other controller format? Like, I know there's tension with using physical controllers versus mouse and keyboard, but maybe not as strong of an example. But I don't know. I just I'm convinced that gaming is important and will be for a long time.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well said. No, yeah, I think you nailed it.
Okay. Well, speaking of nailing it, let's put a bow on this thing. Wrel, you have been down a path of being you were in the Navy, you made YouTube videos for a game you were passionate about, you picked up and moved your life across the country to work on that game, and here you are now as the lead game designer of RPG. Would you recommend others follow in a similar path?
That one, no, totally not. But I will say that if you have an interest in game design, it's less about, I guess, less about what you I don't know or think and more about like what you're doing. So especially when we're like screening candidates and that sort of thing, we look at like the projects that they've been able to make, and like how they work with the team, and what sorts of things that they've done with their life kind of up until this point. And all of like what you do every day, I guess, should be kind of a march towards something that you're passionate about. And to that end, I think that if you really want to get into to game design, start learning and making stuff. My route was very atypical, and you definitely can't expect that to happen to everybody. But there's definitely hope. Like you said, like gaming is not going to become less important or less popular. So yeah, I think the future will kind of be written by the people who decide to make it. So
well said.
Get on it.
Yeah. Well, I can't end on a better note than that. Thanks, Wrel. This has been fantastic and a long-time dream of mine to sit down and chat with you about this stuff.
Hey, yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Could you give us a Wrel-style sign-off?
Absolutely not.
All right. Sorry, guys. Well, this has been a hoot. For those of y'all who are here with us live, yeah, you know where we are, and I am talking to people all around gaming about topics just like these. If you like this kind of discussion, I'll be back. Name of the podcast is Basement Side Chats. We have a Discord community where we play games every day, including Deep Rock, Galactic, and Planetside. So feel free to drop by. And yeah, good game to all. Thanks, Rel. You rock.
Yeah.